Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 2 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham, and it is a brand new year. Now, if you were paying attention, you would have been here last Friday when I did my first brand new year show, where I declared this to be the year of common sense. And I declare once again that this will be the year of common sense, the year that everything changes, the year that things start to get back to normal, the year that everybody works out that net zero isn't really quite the great idea that everybody thought it was over the last 5 years, the year that suddenly we finally find out whether Keir Starmer has got the cojones to stay in power as Prime Minister, or whether he's going to step aside and give the job to somebody who's a bit more capable. But also, of course, over the course of the last few days, we've had a bit of eruption in the world of common sense, because we've had a big row erupting in the ranks of reform. You know, Nigel Farage was going along pretty swimmingly, pretty nicely, pretty well. Everybody talking about him possibly being the next Prime Minister. Suddenly had a bit of a falling out with Elon Musk. We're going to be getting stuck right into that. We're going to be talking to Elon Musk's dad to find out what he thinks about it all. Theo Usherwood is here as well. He's going to be telling us what he makes of it all. There's been an awful lot of words written this morning by all sorts of commentators in all sorts of newspapers. But at the end of the day, the idea is that Elon Musk thinks that Nigel Farage is a busted flush. He thinks that he should get going, and he thinks that they should find a new leader for reform. Now, you might have any number of views about that. You might disagree with him. You might agree with him. You might think he has no intention of actually giving any money to reform now that he doesn't like Nigel Farage. Or is it all some kind of smoke and mirrors job? We will find out. We will get to the bottom of it. We've got lots of other stories to talk about as well. Keir Starmer is back from his holiday, thank goodness, or possibly not. He's going to be announcing all kinds of changes to the NHS. They're going to announce that they're going to cut down the waiting list. There's something like 7.5 million people waiting for operations and procedures on the NHS. They say they're going to be unveiling a new system which is going to make that all better. So you won't have to wait 18 months anymore. You'll only have to wait 18 weeks, but you'll have to wait 4 years for that to happen. So bad luck if you wait for an operation. 0344 499 1000. We'll be finding out why they're thinking of cancelling Hogmanay fireworks in Edinburgh completely and utterly. We'll find out why 50% of firms are going to put their prices up this year, and why Rachel Reeves has cost us another £6 billion over the last weekend. And it's Archbishop Woke's last day as Archbishop of Canterbury. Now, I've got one question. When he finishes being Archbishop of Canterbury, does he still sit in the House of Lords? I'll be asking that question as well. 0344 499 1000. Also today, apparently, is the biggest sickie day of the year so far. The weather ain't very good. There's a bit of snow, there's a bit of rain, there's a bit of wind, so if you're staying tucked up in your bed, don't worry, you can listen to the home of common sense, because here it is. This is Morning Glory. And of course, if you've forgotten how to get in touch like I have a listen to this.
Morning, Mike. This is Maddie from Essex.
Morning, Mike. It's Simon from Devon.
Just regarding Wish You Were Here, Keir, he's made like 18 trips now. I mean, that is bloody ridiculous. I tell you what, I'm getting bloody fed up with him now, Mike.
Aren't we all? The bad news is he's back. And he's going to be in the House of Commons. In fact, today, I think I'm right in saying, very good morning to you, Theo, I think I'm right in saying today's the day they debate whether or not there should be another election, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is in Westminster Hall.
In Westminster Hall.
That you can't have a vote on that.
No.
It's just a debate.
Right.
So if you're hoping that MPs might all vote for the election, unfortunately...
No, I'm not hoping that, but I'm hoping that it might cause a bit of embarrassment for the Labour leadership.
Yeah, I think it's you know, there's 2 point... Well, it was last time I saw...
I think it was 3. I think it's 3 million. I think it actually hit 3 million.
So you know, it's
a lot of people.
It's a huge number of people who are very, very upset with the way that this government has gone over the last 6 months since the general election, and there's going to be a debate, and they can talk about it, but you know, Keir Starmer is going to just shrug his...
Well, you know me, I've been saying this ever since he's been in July the 4th, that he's going. You know, I have been saying that, and of course, some would say, if they were cynical, well, you're going to be proved right eventually. It's not that. I do think that there is more pressure building up on him. You know, Rachel Reeves is in a bad place. Angela Rayner's been very, very quiet. Nobody knows what's really going on at the heart of the Labour government. They're coming out today with what they would call their sort of, I suppose, their set piece on the NHS, but that's not really going to change anything.
They need an heir apparent.
They do.
They need somebody to become the obvious person that they can go to. The only person that sort of sits above the rest of the cabinet is Wes Streeting, the health secretary.
And he was out and about yesterday doing his thing. We'll be hearing from him in a little while. But the other big story, of course, is the Elon Musk and Nigel Farage story. And I've just set things up with a message that I've got here. The first message of the day, the first message of the week from Mick. Musk is acting like a mad Bond movie villain who wants to rule the world. Nigel is right. It is common sense. And I think that's right, isn't it?
Nigel Farage has taken a stand.
Yeah.
And you were talking about all the different, people commenting in the papers about it. The best piece I saw actually was Dan Hodges in the Mail. Yeah. And I think Dan's got it. Well,
I've been grooming Dan Hodges for some time now. He's started to talk common sense. I mean, people have said he started to agree with me on the show as well. So we're doing well there.
So, but Dan's point is this: that Nigel Farage took a stand against Tommy Robinson. It wasn't necessarily in his interest to do so. You could have taken a view that Nigel Farage should have turned around and said, OK, if Elon Musk wants to free Tommy Robinson, I want to free Tommy Robinson because I want the money from Elon Musk, what, $100 million in funding for Reform UK. But he's taken a very different view, and it's going to be interesting to see really whether he gets the money. That's the key. Is Elon Musk going to pull all support for Reform UK while Nigel Farage is in charge? Is he going to pull that £100 million and prevent Reform from promoting their content on his platform?
Luckily though for Nigel Farage, Elon Musk is not the only billionaire he's got in his sights. He's now got Nick Candy on board, and Nick Candy is a very wealthy individual who knows a lot of other very wealthy individuals.
Exactly, and that's the pertinent point, is that once you get one, it's like a snowball. They all follow, and if Nick Candy, he gave £270,000 to the Tories in the space of 2 years. He's got lots of multi-millionaires.
Well, we're told he's already given a seven-figure sum to Reform, I think, on his appointment as Treasurer. But let's have a look at what Nigel Farage said over the course of the weekend, because he had a series of appearances in various different guises. First of all, in Chelmsford on Saturday. Here's what Nigel has to say about Elon Musk.
He's got Elon, who is a proper hero, who believes in free speech. And free speech doesn't mean you agree with every single word that everyone says, but it means you have a platform and the right to excuse it.
As he says, you don't have to believe everything he says or agree with everything he says. Here's what he said to Laura Kuenssberg on BBC Breakfast yesterday.
And is his friend, Elon Musk, now your friend, and is he going to give you millions of pounds?
Well, that's a real question, isn't it? Now, forget about the $100 million being talked about in the newspapers.
Are you going to give you money?
That is for the birds.
Is he going to give you money?
He may well do. He may well do. But it's got to be legal. He's got to be comfortable with it. He may well give us money. Whether he does or not, I'll tell you what he gives us. With huge numbers of young people, he makes us look cool.
Is the reason you hope he's going to give you money, is that why you don't want to criticise him?
I think I've made it perfectly clear that I don't agree with everything he stands for, but I do believe in free speech. I think he's a hero, and I said that well before any potential money was offered.
And he did say that, but then she continued to ask him about Elon Musk and about the relationship. Have a look.
But would you tell Elon Musk that he is wrong? So I know you've distanced yourself from his comments about Tommy Robinson.
Do you know what? Real friends, when they meet face to face, have conversations, and they agree to agree, and sometimes they agree to disagree. And that is what open society and free speech is all about.
And he also said, I'm going to go to the inauguration and I'm going to see Elon Musk, and we'll have a variety of conversations about a whole load of stuff, right? And after that appeared, Elon Musk then put out a tweet saying the Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. Which kind of took everybody slightly by surprise, because until that moment, all he'd been doing was attacking Keir Starmer and attacking Jess Phillips. He was calling for them both to be jailed, while he was at the same time calling for Tommy Robinson to be freed. And a lot of people were saying, Elon Musk is now starting to kind of slightly overstep the mark here, and he's actually probably damaging Reform by some of this stuff that he's coming out with, because not all of his statements turn out to be entirely true.
Yes, and on the Tommy Robinson issue, Tommy Robinson is a convicted criminal.
Right. He's also in prison.
He's in prison
for something other than the grooming gang story.
Yes, he is serving an 18-month prison sentence for breaching a court order. So Nigel Farage cannot associate himself in any way with Tommy Robinson, even if he wanted to, and he doesn't.
To be fair, he never has,
and he doesn't want to, because ultimately, if Nigel Farage, and there's a piece in the Mail where Zia Youssef, the chairman of Reform UK, is talking about Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister, winning over 300 seats at the next election, and if you'd asked me last year whether that was possible, I'd have said absolutely no way. But you can see the trajectory where the latest MRP poll put Reform on 120 seats. And we're not, at the moment at least, going to have an election until 2029. So you can see the trajectory where Nigel Farage does become Prime Minister. But in order to do that, he needs to ensure that the majority, a significant number of right-minded, thinking British voters want to support him. And they are not behind the likes of Tommy Robinson.
No, they're not. And the thing is, the same people who say, oh, there's no chance of Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister, the same people who used to say there's no chance of Donald Trump becoming President.
Exactly.
And not only did he become President, but he's become President twice, which is the only second time in the history of America that somebody has managed to do that with another, President in between the two terms. So, I think an awful lot of analysis gets it wrong an awful lot of the time. And you're quite right to say that, Nigel Farage over time has been very consistent in his lack of support for UKIP when they started embracing Tommy Robinson, for his moving away from UKIP when that happened. And as somebody pointed out this morning, I think it was Tim Stanley in the Telegraph, all of these people like Lawrence Fox and Calvin Robinson and Tommy Robinson and all these people, they've all stood for election and got absolutely nowhere. So, let's not pretend that there's this massive, great voting bloc out there waiting to make, these people, MPs. There isn't.
The same thing happens on the left as well. When you go right to the fringes of the political spectrum, you see the likes of these trade unions that have this special left, really hard left group. They get like 2 voters, and one of them's a dog. I'm telling you, people don't vote for those kind of individuals in those parties.
Well, Owen Jones now is about as anti-Keir Starmer as I am. I mean, in fact, he's more vitriolic about Keir Starmer on Twitter than I am, because he sees him as this ghastly kind of, Zionist enabling, right-wing Labourite who's ruining the reputation that Jeremy Corbyn spent so long building up.
But
isn't it?
Yeah, but Jeremy Corbyn never won a general election. But the other thing to say is, it's not. When you face somebody who argues, you say, well, Labour's got a majority of 174. And you can go, yes, they have got a majority of 174, but that is a shallow majority. We are talking about, they did it very cleverly, they were very tactical in the way they built up their numbers, fine. But those numbers, they are shallow majorities.
Thin,
they are thin. And Reform came second in 98 seats. In 89 of those seats, they were second where Labour had won.
Yes.
And the point is that it doesn't take that much more for them to win those seats, and then of course to build up in constituencies where they didn't do so well too. So it is perfectly possible that Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister at the next election.
Yeah, whether or not Elon Musk gives him any money, that's not really the issue. Elon Musk's already tweeting, by the way. He's still up because he's presumably in California, where it's not even midnight yet. He says, have they deported any of the gang rapists, even one? I mean, he really has galvanised this entire conversation, hasn't he? Because Labour are now sort of struggling. Keir Starmer's put out a statement saying that they're going to enact all of the recommendations from the J report, which the Tories didn't do, which is sort of a bit of arse covering, if you like, but it doesn't really tell. Yeah, it doesn't really tell the story because they haven't done anything. And we know from all of the stuff that's now coming out about what happened back in 2007, 2008, when Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecutions. There's a whole litany of stories which are out there now about what wasn't done and about cover-ups and about counsellors and about, secret sweetheart deals being done to stop people going to prison, people who should be deported not being deported. The whole thing is an absolute shambles.
Yes, and Labour are not going to grant you can't see any way, shape or form, given the rhetoric from Wes Streeting yesterday when he was out describing the attacks against Jess Phillips from Elon Musk as a smear, that any way that Labour are going to launch another inquiry. But to your point, Alexis Jay has come out, she ran the first inquiry, has come out and said, well, hang on a moment, 2 years ago I made these recommendations and not one of these recommendations.
Nobody did anything.
And it's not just, you can put the blame on the Conservatives and say, well, they didn't enact the recommendations, but by the same token, Keir Starmer, who was the Director of Public Prosecutions, is now the Prime Minister and he's had 6 months, and still these recommendations have not been enacted.
And they've already said to us, haven't they, that they've had to make priorities, and they haven't made this one of their priorities. They're doing it now because Elon Musk is starting to, get up their noses and starting to upset them all. But basically, the Labour government got in July. They've done nothing about the grooming gangs at all.
We like to think of things as being binary, Mike, don't we? We like to think somebody is we're pro somebody or we're against somebody. But Elon Musk, he has given this story impetus.
He turbocharged it.
He turbocharged it, condemning on Tommy Robinson. Do you see what I mean? You're not just putting people in boxes and saying, well, there is some merit. If we get as a result of this the recommendations implemented, that is a good thing.
Yeah.
something we should
people deported, which should be happening.
Yes.
You know, these people with dual nationality and many various different MPs of different hues, and the Tories are being very strong on this too as well at the moment, and you can accuse them of being hypocrites for not doing anything and now calling for things to be done. However, you know, there's an awful lot of people now, senior MPs, former ministers and current ministers, calling for people to be punished properly and be deported.
But Kemi Badenoch released the statement, of course, only after Elon Musk raised it. And Nigel Farage, when he turns around afterwards and says, well, hang on, talk is cheap, he does have a fair point.
He does.
That actually, you know, the Tories, this was nothing to the Tories. Reform setting the... Well, firstly, Musk is setting the agenda, then Reform comes in off the back of it, and then suddenly the Tories are hopping up and down.
And the point, of course, as well, and we'll stop in a minute, because otherwise we'll get told off, but the point as well is that the difference between Nigel Farage and Elon Musk would appear to be that Elon Musk is honing in on the rape gangs, the grooming gangs, as we call them at this time of the morning. I know some people prefer to use the other word, I don't. But the point is that Elon Musk is actually pro-immigration. Nigel Farage isn't. Yes. So, you know, while Musk is joining those who are against Islamic immigration, Nigel Farage is against all immigration on the basis that, you know, there's too much of it and we've let it get out of control. But it's not just about grooming gangs.
It's a very good point because, of course, it's worth reminding ourselves that actually in America there's a huge split because Steve Bannon, who is an advisor, he's known as being an old-school MAGA strategist, right?
Yeah, he's kind of out of favour there now, isn't he?
He's out of favour. But, you know, there's this split between the two courts within the Trump elect, the party that's going to join into the White House, between the old school in the old school MAGA crowd, which is against all kinds of immigration, and then, of course, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who are going to be running the Department for Government Efficiency, who are very pro-immigration for skilled migrants, the very top.
Well, this is the thing that Tim Stanley was saying this morning, that Elon Musk is essentially a futurist. You know, he's a guy that doesn't even think about globalism. He thinks about, you know, outer space. You know, he doesn't just want to colonise, you know, most of the world for himself. He wants to colonise Mars. And he wants to have us all living in some kind of, you know, dream world where we've all got amazing electric cars and rockets and all the rest of it. All very brilliant and fantastic stuff. But, you know, is he the guy you want advising you on your immigration debate? I don't know. That's the question. We've got lots to talk about, though. Loads and loads of people getting in touch this morning. This is the place to come to for common sense, because common sense is in short supply, ladies and gentlemen. But this is going to be the year of common sense, and we're going to gather it all for you, and we're going to package it all up, and we're going to present it to you and go, this is what people should be doing. This is what we should be doing. Let's hear from James.
Good morning, Mike. James here. Now, I believe that Rupert Lowe will be the new leader of Reform. I can actually see Nigel stepping away. I'm a big fan of Nigel. I think he's a phenomenal guy. But I can see Rupert Lowe going into that position very, very well. And just a quick little note, well done for holding these Labour politicians and Tory politicians to account. Because quite frankly, Mike, the mainstream media are absolutely useless, scandalous what they get away with. Keep up the great work, Mike.
James, very much appreciated. I can't say I agree with you about Rupert Lowe. Great man, very, very interesting MP, doing some wonderful things in Parliament and working very, very well for Reform. But you can't just announce somebody as a leader of a new political party. Nigel Farage has built this thing from the ground up for many, many years, and he deserves not only to be given a chance to run it and to take it into the mainstream where he's taken it. Let's face it, you know, this is a guy who was written off hundreds of times by the leftists, by the Ramonas. They all kept saying, oh, he's never won an election in his life, when he actually had won several. So there's lots going on, there's lots to talk about, and certainly by all means give us your views, because we want to hear them. This is a democracy, ladies and gentlemen. This is not the Labour Party, this is not the Tory Party, this is not Elon Musk land. This is Morning Glory, and this is Talk.
Because I think language matters, and I think using the term grooming is a little bit too euphemistic for my taste. I mean, these were gang rapes. I think that's the term we should use. Like, these were rape gangs. And grooming sounds almost, given what we know now, given the court documents we've seen also from 2013, what happened to these girls was not that somebody was grooming them into consensual sex. I mean, this was, there was blackmail, there was violence, there was force. This is an absolute crime, a tragedy, a travesty.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 6. This, of course, is the home of common sense, and this is going to be the year of common sense. Jennifer says this: morning, Mike. Glad you're back in the common sense seat. Farage needs to stand his ground. I was shocked to hear what Musk had said. The problem is Musk thinks everyone must do as he wants, otherwise he will just discard them. A powerful man with all the money in the world can be dangerous. I'll be voting for Farage and his policies, not because he's associated with Elon Musk. And I think that's going to be the kind of inference that we get all the way through the show today. Theo Osherwood's here with us as well. Let's have a look at what else was going on yesterday, though, because, of course, very, very cold weather over the last few days. Lots of snow in lots of parts of the country. I think Manchester Airport was shut down, as was Liverpool Airport, as was Leeds. There was snow pretty much all the way down to, I would say, North London, I think. Yeah. I think they had a bit of a sprinkling on Hampstead Heath, even, for those of you who know where that is. Kevin O'Sullivan, of course, lives there. He's back tonight at 7. But so, very, very cold weather. Wes Streeting yesterday, Secretary of State for Health, of course, and Social Care, was asked about the winter fuel allowance.
Was it the most tactful New Year's message to advise people to turn up the heating after you've taken their winter fuel allowance away?
Well, it is part of the advice that the NHS is giving to people during this cold snap to make sure that people are doing whatever they can to keep warm. Of course, that doesn't mean that getting rid of the winter fuel allowance for others has been a popular decision. But like many of the unpopular choices we've made in the last...
Not necessarily amongst the 9 million who you took it away from, and particularly the ones who are just above that threshold. I mean, there is an issue here, isn't there?
But bear in mind, we've kept the triple lock for pensioners, so it will continue to rise with the cost of living. And more generally, Trevor, there are decisions we've made in the last 6 months, like on winter fuel allowance or other measures to raise money in the budget that were unpopular. The reason we've been wanting to make unpopular decisions in the last 6 months is to get Britain out of the massive hole it was left in. So they might be unpopular decisions now, but I hope there'll be decisions that in the longer run people thank us for when they see the country improving.
So Wes Streeting thinks that pensioners who don't any longer have the winter fuel allowance will be thanking him for it down the road when they go, do you know what, I didn't think it was a good idea at the time because I was freezing to death and some of my friends actually did die. But now that you mention it, probably was a good idea on balance. Yes. What's he talking about?
And it comes after, of course, he told told pensioners to turn up the heat. Yeah. It's going to be a cold snap.
Yeah, it's going to be freezing cold.
Temperatures going down to -11
for the next week, basically.
And that's and there was also some advice about layering up.
Yeah.
Do you remember when David Cameron's spokesman? It was a few years ago. It was many years ago. I was talking about this with an old colleague of mine, and David Cameron's spokesman said, put on a jumper if it's cold. Put on a jumper. Yeah. Everyone went mad. They're always telling you to put on a jumper. Yeah. And of course now Labour doing turn up the heating.
Yeah, turn up the heating
when you're taking away the fuel allowance. Yeah. This was a bad decision, and Wes Streeting knows it, and he uses the word, well, it's not popular, and you might thank us later. But he knows it's a bad.
Of course he does. And also this nonsense that some of them are trying to hide behind, which is that they've protected the most vulnerable people, and they've all been given extra money. Well, they haven't actually, because we know that something like 89% of the people who were getting the winter fuel allowance are now not getting it. So there's no way that all of those people are wealthy pensioners,
No. And it's as Trevor Phillips mentions there, you heard him there, he was saying, you know, it's about those just over the threshold,
right,
and who are missing out. It's a very arbitrary line.
Who have got just about, what, 12
credit, then you get it.
12 and a bit thousand.
12 and a bit thousand is not, or 18,000. Yeah. These are not wealthy people who are suffering. We're seeing temperatures plummet now. You know, it's not just, it's people are freezing cold. It's, you know, minus 11 in parts of the country, and they've got there's no way out of it.
I mean, my flat is actually a relatively warm place because it's obviously in a building with other flats around it. But I was away from Friday, I came back last night, and even that was cold. And it, just because it's been a cold weekend, you know, and I haven't had the heating on while I wasn't there, obviously. And you know, if you're living in a place which is isolated and which is not surrounded by other property, you're going to be cold.
Yes, and you can't. Yeah, and you can't have, you know, you can't necessarily afford to have warm running water, hot water. You can't dry clothes if you use dry clothes. It affects people's.
Because it's not just heating. I mean, everybody's telling me now that their electricity bill is higher now than it's ever been. Yeah. You know, even under the Tories, when Liz Truss was in charge, and she started to give people money back, you know, which I wasn't particularly in favour of, but that's something that happened under the Tories and under Rishi Sunak as well. But at the end of the day, bills are now higher than they've ever been, and this is a Labour government that came in on the promise that they would reduce your energy bill by £300 a year. That's gone. Right? That hasn't happened.
And what's interesting, actually, the front page of the Eye, they've revealed that actually they're going to drop the ban for an outright ban on gas boilers by 2035. So the reason they're doing that, of course, is they're realising the folly of this net zero project. Nonsense. That they know that they cannot implement. It's simply not going to be possible to ban. You know, we had the car industry slashing jobs across the country.
Well, they've ruined the car industry
because they can't sell the requisite number of electric vehicles. People don't want to buy.
And this month, by the way, your cost of your family holiday is going up because they're putting an extra tax on airlines because they're saying to them that they've got to now carry a certain percentage of green fuel, whatever the hell that is. And so basically, your family holiday now is going to cost another £300 or £400 quid.
Yes, and
thanks a lot, guys.
Air passenger duty got hiked in the budget, but. If you go back to net zero, the problem they have is they can't implement it because nobody wants to buy. I saw some research out, it was yesterday, people don't want to buy electric vehicles because there's nowhere to charge them, or they're worried about how long it's going to take to charge. You know, if you're trying to get the kids to the school and the car needs charging, you can't afford to sit around for 2 hours for a forecourt.
And guess what happens in freezing cold weather? It's even more difficult to charge because the colder the car is, the longer it takes to charge, and the quicker the charge burns down when you've got the heating on in the car. Yeah. So they don't tell you any of that stuff when you buy a Tesla.
And the infrastructure just doesn't exist, and the penny's dropping that it isn't going to save money, and they're not going to be able to see it through. And as a country, do we really have the ability to go down head down these follies to try and...
We don't.
We don't.
Well, funnily enough, talking about Dan Hodges, people have raised this. Net Zero Watch actually reproduced the interview that I did last Friday with him, because he actually said people inside of the Labour cabinet now and inside the Labour government are actually questioning whether Ed Miliband has lost his marbles and whether this is a guy that they should allow to rattle around and say the things that he's saying, because clearly he's doing an awful lot of damage to the Labour kind of, you know, stability factor, because people are looking at what he's saying and thinking, you can't do that. You can't do any of that.
No, and you know, if Labour want to stand any chance of turning it around this year, I know you don't think they're going to. I've got serious reservations about whether Keir Starmer is going to end this year more popular than he's begun it, because let's be frank about it, his popularity ratings are through the floor.
Well, we keep saying he can't get any more unpopular, but he manages to do it. He does manage to.
But if they've got to stand any chance of getting it around, turning it around, they've got to concentrate, they've got to focus ruthlessly on supporting not just those at the bottom end, but at the bottom of, you know, the poorest pensioners and those at the very bottom, but those, you know, creeping up the income scale now, who have, whether they be pensioners or families or whatever, who are really struggling to make ends meet because we've got...
Well, what he's got to do is prove to the British public that he actually supports them, because that's where he's failing, because that's where the ratings are going down the gurgler, where people are saying, we don't think Keir Starmer cares about British people, he cares about migrants, he cares about stopping people from being deported, he cares about making sure that people who come here from other countries illegally are looked after, but he doesn't care about the people that are actually already here. Let's have a look at what he said about Islamophobia in 2023. Or maybe not, we'll come back to that. Just to add insult to injury, a piece in the Mail today concerning the winter fuel allowance. Civil servants taking away winter fuel payments from pensioners are enduring annual bonuses of up to £14,000. It's nice, isn't it?
It's madness. I'm surprised, actually, the Mail didn't splash on this story. I mean, they've got something on e-scooters.
E-scooters, we'll come back
on
to that
in a second. But the idea that, you know, civil servants who came up with this idea, who are implementing this idea in the... Well, I think it's actually they're the ones who are implementing it in the Department of Work and Pensions. It will be the civil servants in the Treasury who came up with the idea, are spending £14,000, receiving £14,000 in bonuses. I mean, they've lost their... This is the sort of thing that they can't allow to happen.
No.
And what if your listeners picking up the mail today or listening now, just reading this, you just think this is madness.
Yeah, they've taken £200 away from most households. 10 million elderly people who are receiving the allowance are now not getting it. Instead, they've given the money to civil servants.
And that's 3,000 pensioners who receive the winter fuel allowance had they not given the bonuses to the civil servants.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Shows you how tone-deaf they really are, doesn't it? There's other scandals around the Labour Party going on at the moment as well. We'll come back to some of those too. How about this from Ty, who says, what is this crazy double think? We'll increase the number of NHS appointments by 40,000 a week by cancelling unnecessary appointments and using goddamn Apple AirPods and smart watches. What is an unnecessary appointment? Sometimes checkups are good after seeing the doctor. Helps to catch post-op or post-viral syndrome. So we will get more appointments by having less appointments. The Labour Party just manipulate the English language and fudge policy to make themselves think they sound good, while in reality offering very little. That pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? I mean, I read the embargoed press statement last night about what is happening in the NHS, and we'll come on to it in a moment because we've got to take a quick break. But there's nothing in there that makes any sense.
No.
As Ty quite rightly points out, we're going to get more appointments by having less appointments. Huh? I mean, talk about doublespeak. It's like living in some Orwellian nightmare. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:37. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. This is the real beginning of the year of common sense. We kicked it off last Friday, but this is the proper 5 days a week, Morning Glory, 4 hours a day. Glorious, isn't it? Theo Usherwood's here with us. We're looking at all manner of things. Let's have a look back, though, since we're talking about grooming gangs, since we're talking about Elon Musk and Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage and all of the things that surround all three of those individuals. This is what Keir Starmer said about Islamophobia in 2023.
As leader of the Labour Party, I am indebted to the contributions of Muslim members, activists and politicians who make our party what it is today. I'd like to thank Muslim organisations and mosques who work tirelessly to raise awareness and shine a light on the scale of Islamophobia.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, what about the scale of rape gangs in the north of England, in various places from Oxford to Telford to Rochdale to Oldham? Apparently, according to Jess Phillips, not worthy of an investigation. So Labour are now kind of hanging their hat on the idea of the last investigation that nobody enacted. That also, by the way, is an interesting piece of footage, because that is when he made two statements that day. One while wearing a poppy in his lapel, which he then removed to make the thanks to the Muslim groups, because he took the poppy away. And that, I think, is why people see through Keir Starmer, because he's nothing but a cardboard cutout of a man who pretends to believe in one thing but actually doesn't.
Yeah, he needs... When it comes to this particular issue, I don't understand how Oldham Council, which my recollection is a Labour council, it asked for the government support for this national inquiry, for a specific inquiry into Oldham, and it was turned down. Yeah. And I can't forget Elon Musk, right? Put him to one side. He put rocket boosters under the story. Yeah. But I can't understand the initial decision where Oldham turns around to the Home Office and says, we would like you to help us with an investigation with this, and then the Home Office, Jess Phillips, signs it off, says, well, no, we're not going to do that, because so if you want to have your investigation, you want to have your inquiry, go ahead and have your inquiry. There may be specific things that happened in Oldham that need to be discovered and uncovered and dealt with.
Chris Philp was very good on this yesterday. He was on Laura Kunsberg and he said, look, you know, the Tory party are being accused of not doing anything about it either, but they were asked by a couple of individual Oldham councillors. This request came to Jess Phillips from Oldham Council as a collective, as a group, because they have since discovered things that the previous inquiry didn't uncover. And we now know, for example, what Simon Danchuk's been talking about in Rochdale, where he was actively discouraged from pushing a particular plan. We know from Lucy Allen as well, a former MP in Telford, who was warned off not only by her party but by the police, who basically said this will be bad for your career if you push this narrative, because it's not happening. And we've got so many difficulties now with this story, highlighted to a large extent by Elon Musk over recent days, that Keir Starmer is going to have to do something other than just say, we're going to enact the 2-year-old recommendations from an old inquiry. Not good enough.
And Chris Philp made the point at the end of last week, Shadow Home Secretary, that they would like it, you know, as part of the investigation should look at Keir Starmer's involvement. Now, Number 10 have put out various statements or steers as to what Keir Starmer has done. But that doesn't preclude the fact that you couldn't have an inquiry which would look specifically at what the CPS was doing over this period, 2008 to 2013, when Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecutions. The two things can be true at the same time. Do you know what? They're not mutually exclusive. And I don't think, you know, if it was Elon Musk saying we need a public inquiry and Oldham was saying no, it's all okay, we've got it all under control, you could understand the Home Office's reticence. But it's the Oldham Council and the other councils that have asked for support to hold the inquiry, so that it doesn't become an internal narrative where people are marking their own homework.
But this is also where it becomes interesting between Nigel Farage and Elon Musk, because Elon Musk was already starting to kind of wander off the reservation, if you like, in terms of the fact that he was calling for the jailing of the Prime Minister of Great Britain, an elected official, and Jess Phillips, whether you like her or not, an elected official, safeguarding minister. You know, it's not for Elon Musk. Somebody can do it, and Nigel Farage says you can do it if you want. It's up to you. You can be a free speech absolutist. You can call for people to be put in jail. But that starts to sound bonkers. Starts to sound mad. So actually, a lot of people now saying, I'm going to read you this from Claire, because a lot of people are saying, actually, Nigel Farage has done the right thing here, and actually Elon Musk sort of more or less calling for him to be replaced is actually good for Nigel Farage. How about this? She says, morning, Mike, good to have you back. I think Elon has gone too far over his statement about Nigel. Nigel has helped Trump with his election drive, and Elon is a part of Trump's close aides and advisors. Why disrupt this key relationship with Trump and Nigel and reform? This could undermine reform and cause unnecessary infighting. Elon's made his first mistake and should apologise. Fantastic to bring attention to the long-forgotten raping gangs, but he needs to butt out of this one. And I think an awful lot of reform voters are saying that today.
And if you look at what's happened, Mike, the important thing is to get to the truth as to what has gone on. Yes, the Alexis J report went so far in doing that, but we haven't even had the recommendations, any of the recommendations enacted, and she's now having to say we need to have the recommendations enacted by this government. But it's not just about, you know, we need to look at why this particular group of Pakistani men were committing these offences
and getting away with it.
And that's the important thing, is why was it when the police turned up, were they arresting these children
yeah.
because they thought,
or the parents,
or described because they thought they were fantasists or they were making it all up? Why were social services not believing these children? Because the most important thing is to stop it happening and prevent it from
Why did
happening
Gordon
again.
Brown issue a statement to all councils to say that he did not want to see them, pursuing any of this stuff?
But not... The priority has to be to stop it happening again, and if it is continuing to happen, to make sure it doesn't. To make sure that it doesn't happen. That's it. Nothing else in this whole debate matters. Political longevity, political expediency,
well, of course,
none of it matters.
As you might have expected, the BBC, in the guise of Lord Kunsberg yesterday, was getting her knickers in a twist all the more about the fact that the language being used was terrible, that Elon Musk was using this terrible language and calling, Jess Phillips a witch, and calling Keir Starmer, a pedo apologist and, a rape apologist or something like that. It's all very well to say that perhaps it's unparliamentary language, but the point is that they were more upset about the language than they were about the actual deeds themselves that were being complained about. And that's the problem. With an awful lot of this middle-class kind of schmoozing of subjects that they don't really like talking about, it's easier for them to attack Elon Musk for his words than it is to attack a group of Muslim men for raping children. And that's incredible.
We have to be able to deal with these crimes, and we have to be able to stop it from happening again. And there should be nothing that gets in the way of that happening.
Exactly right. Meanwhile, front page of the Telegraph, just to vary the subject slightly, migrants are far more likely to be held for sex crimes, according to some information that we've got from the police. Foreign nationals are more than 3 times as likely to be arrested for sexual offences as British citizens. Police made more than 9,000 arrests of foreign nationals for sex offences in the first 10 months of last year, which represents a quarter of the total estimated offences.
Yeah, they've done a crime league table. This is out from the Centre for Migration Control. It's on the front page of the Telegraph. Their crime league table places Albanians as the nationality most likely to be arrested, followed by Afghans, Iraqis, Algerians and Somalians. There were 48 nationalities with a higher arrest rate per 1,000 of their population than British suspects. Of course, we're in a situation at the moment where we have hundreds of people crossing the English Channel every week.
They had the first lot of the year yesterday, I believe, 61 of them.
More than 150,000 since 2018, because, of course, the scale of those crossings when it comes to those crossing the Channel, they're in hotel accommodation.
You're all still here, by the way.
Up and down the country, and they have not been. There are a few which are held in detention centres because they are about to be deported, but at the moment they're in communities.
They're in the system,
and there are many communities in poor communities because the Home Office are trying to save money when it comes to accommodation.
Yes, exactly right. We've got much more to talk about. Talking about accommodation, there's a Labour minister who was gifted a flat in Hampstead, one of the very nice parts of London, thanks to the outgoing corrupt leaders of Bangladesh. So it's such a complicated story. I'll let you explain it in a moment. Also, we're going to be finding out why we've been paying hotel bills for the boss of the BBC to stay in London, because he doesn't fancy making it all the way back to his absolutely lavish mansion in Oxfordshire. Also, we'll be talking about crime as well, because some youth gangs have been raiding Apple stores over the course of the last few days. And also, we're going to talk about Justin Trudeau, who's apparently going to step down this week. Now, if that's not a step in the right direction for the year of common sense, I don't know what is. This is Morning Glory, back after this.
Yeah, I think obviously climbing to the top of the rankings is going to be a goal that Luke will set himself over the next 12 months or so. There's a lot of major tournaments that we've got that Luke hasn't won yet. You know, he won the Premier League and the Grand Slam this year, but he hasn't won the World Match Play, and you know, the next major ones will be the World Masters and the UK Open that he'll have his sights set on. So, you know, Luke's got a world of opportunities in front of him, both on and off the oche. He's 17 years old. He could probably have a 40-year career as a professional dart player if he wants one.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:49, with you all the way through until 10, of course, 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory every single weekday morning. Theo Usherwood's here with us this morning, going through all the big stories in the papers. There's plenty of them. One here from Donna, who says, "Morning, Mike. If I asked my mam, who doesn't use social media, who Rupert Lowe was, she wouldn't know. Brilliant as he is, Farage is the reform brand that was voted for by 4.5 million people to lead the party. He's the only one who can get the party into office." I think I would absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that. Rupert Lowe's a great guy. We have him on the show on a regular basis. He's a terrific MP. He gives his MP salary every month to a different charity in the Great Yarmouth constituency that he has, and he's a terrific guy and one of 5 Reform MPs, but he's not Nigel Farage and he's not leadership material, I'm afraid. Sorry to say that. Let's talk about, though, yet another Labour scandal, and this is a big one. Page 5 of the Daily Mail. Pressure mounts on minister who used a second home linked to despotic regime in Bangladesh. Quite complicated, this, isn't it?
This is quite complicated, but it continues, the drip continues against Tulip Siddiq, who, of course, is a Treasury Minister in charge of, you wouldn't believe it, but corruption.
Well, she is a bit of an expert on corruption, given that most of her family seems to have been kicked out of Bangladesh for corruption.
So it now emerges that she's under growing pressure because, of course, she made use of a second home linked to the recently deposed Bangladeshi regime, of which her aunt, Sheikh Hasina, was the Prime Minister. She used a flat in Hampstead, North London, after it was given to...
That doesn't come cheap, does it?
No, they're not. If you go on your right move and you type in flat North London, Hampstead, you're not going to find much under £1 million quid, are you?
No.
After it was given to her teenage sister by an ally of the ousted Awami League party. And of course, she also stands accused of, it emerged previously that she was given a flat in King's Cross by another associate of a senior Awami League member, and that's sparked calls, of course, for an inquiry, and this all goes back to...
And it's been rumbling along for a while.
It's been rumbling along for a while. It all goes back to allegations in Bangladesh, which we should say at this point Tulip Siddiq denies that she was involved in helping to broker a $10 billion £10 billion deal for a nuclear power plant with the Russians, and then as a result of that embezzled, and this was the allegation, she helped to embezzle £4 billion of that into her.
And there's always a picture, isn't there? And they keep reusing the same picture, and it's a picture of Tulip Siddiq with Sheikh Hasina, you know, her relative, and Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
From 2013, and it's like, you know, be careful who you have your picture taken with. Probably best not to have your picture taken with Vladimir Putin.
And she was spoken with officials from the Propriety and Ethics group within the Cabinet Office, and her explanation was taken, I think, if I remember correctly, at face value. But again, we've now...
Well, it's not a great look for Starmer, is it?
It's three separate.
He's already had to lose one minister who was, of course, a convicted fraudster, Louise Haigh, Secretary of State for Transport, who he didn't know apparently was a convicted fraudster. He's now got this woman accused of all sorts of corrupt practices.
She's close. She's in the next door constituency in North London, which is
incredible itself.
which is, you know, the neighbouring constituency to Keir's, Starmer's, Holborn and St Pancras constituency as well. So, you know, she's in the fold.
Yes, and speaking of North London, just in case you thought that all we do here is talk about politics, there was some shopping done over the weekend, some of it done by people who were paying for what they were buying, some of it done by people who were not paying. This is a picture from Brent Cross Shopping Centre of a load of young kids roaming into an Apple store. You can see them all basically all dressed in black, wearing balaclavas. The people inside the shop run out because they don't want to see what's about to happen, and these kids basically just lift a load of phones and run with as much booty as they can gather straight out into the body of the hall, and nobody can stop them because there's about 15 or 20 of them. The police apparently managed to arrest quite a few of them later on, and they're all aged between 14 and 18. And this, I guess, is now what you do on a Saturday or a Sunday if you've got nothing better to do.
And it's just sheer numbers, and the security guard might pick up one or two of them. But you know, I've seen it happen. I've been in an Apple shop where it's happened. They've just come in to mess about and turn up the music. They whiz in and then they turn up all the music or all the speakers, and then suddenly there's blasting out this music. But I've never seen it. But I'm not surprised.
I mean, whenever I've gone into one of these shops, everything seems to be nailed down, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know how they managed to nick it all. Maybe if you just grab it and just
yank it fast enough, and just pull it.
I mean, I wouldn't know because I generally tend to go into shops with the idea of buying something as opposed to stealing it. So I'm sorry if I don't have the expertise, you know. But it does anyway. Let's talk a little bit about another thieving scenario, and that would be, of course, Rachel Thieves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's gone very quiet, hasn't she, over the last few weeks? Ever since almost everyone in the world of commerce and economics and finance has said that her budget was an absolute disgrace. Front page of the Telegraph today. Business fears over taxation have hit a record high in the wake of Rachel Reeves' devastating budget. This is the British Chamber of Commerce saying basically 63% of businesses say they're concerned about the tax burden. Half of the companies surveyed said that they're going to be putting their prices up, which is obviously going to impact the cost of living and probably inflation. And on top of that, on their business pages, Rachel Reeves is now facing a £6.4 billion blow from rising gilt yields, and basically her tax and spending plans are going to be thrown into disarray. I mean, it's not going well, is it?
No, it's not going well. Starting with this one, of course, you know, if businesses, this is up, you know, in the last three months ago, 48% of businesses said they're worried about the tax burden. That's now gone up to 63%. So as a result of the changes to the national insurance contributions, people are now businesses are more concerned. And if they're concerned about their tax, what they're going to be paying in tax, they're going to be putting up prices.
Sure.
If they're putting up prices, we get inflation. If we get inflation, interest rates stay high, and therefore we're paying more.
People's mortgages go up.
Yeah, exactly. We don't see lower mortgages, therefore we have less money to spend, and it hits confidence. At the same time, if the cost of borrowing is going up for the government, or it remains high for the government, what we pay back on our debt, the interest we pay back on our debt, remains high. That's money that could otherwise be spent on the NHS, on public services.
Again, they've crashed the economy, but where are all the condemnations coming from the city of what Rachel Reeves did compared to what Liz Truss did? It's still not happening, interestingly enough. A couple of other things to mention. One for Sadiq Khan. London is now the most congested city in the world, despite the fact that we've got a congestion charge. So well done to Sadiq Khan. Another prize there for him. New York has got their first congestion charge starting as well. Bit controversial. I wanted to ask you a question though. Archbishop Wokeby, as we like to call him, final day as Archbishop of Canterbury today. Does he retain his seat in the House of Lords if he's no longer Archbishop of Canterbury? I don't think he should.
I'm pretty certain that he will retain his seats in the House.
Do they not have to formally make him a Lord, though, or a peer of the realm in some way? I mean, I don't know the answer to this.
I think that when you get your seat in the House of Lords as an archbishop, then you get that for
So when you retire from being an archbishop,
you keep your seat in the House of Lords.
See, that seems wrong to me. I mean, I don't think he should be there for that. And also, let's talk about briefly Tim Davie, the man who is, of course, the BBC's Director General. He's had stays totaling nearly a month in the last year at a Plus Central London hotel, which is not being named, because he didn't want to commute back to his £4 million mansion in Oxfordshire. So licence fee payers have picked up the tab for his repeated stays at a 4-star hotel. I'm surprised it's not a 6-star hotel, as well as other overnight accommodation in the capital. Now, people will say, well, you know, when you're head of an organisation, you sometimes have to stay over because you've got a dinner to go to or something like that. All very well. But this guy is paid a lot of money, $525,000. You think he could pay for his own hotels if he's decided to stay in town, don't you?
Yes, and just very quickly, he will keep his seat in the House of Lords. I've checked it, confirmed it, yes.
Right.
But just
we'll see if we can put a stop to that. I mean, this is the year of common sense.
Do you think poor Justin Welby in some way is listening in Lambeth Palace? He's leaving. He's about, the boxes are surrounding.
Yeah.
Mike Graham, just give me a break.
No, he's not getting a break from me. No, you've forgotten what he's done, this guy. I mean,
If you look
done
at
some
that
bad stuff.
And if you look at that horrendous speech he gave, where that was just like, he just seemed to make light of the seriousness.
Completely. Yeah.
No,
I would have him stripped. I would have him stripped of it. Honestly, I think we missed out a campaign. But yeah, so Tim Davie.
So Tim Davie, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can live in a very large house in Oxfordshire in Henley-upon-Thames, which costs £4 million, no less, and then you need to stay in a hotel in London.
Yeah.
Well, the rest of us commute, don't we?
Well, we do.
On a train.
And I'm sorry, if you've got a job that involves you working at night, then get yourself a flat.
Yeah.
You've got £500,000 a year. I think you can probably afford it. What the hell are we doing paying for it?
And what's really sad, actually, because the BBC are making cuts, but what's really sad about the BBC cuts is they're cutting all their journalism. They're cutting all of the stuff that really irritates us and really gets us hot under the collar. They're keeping that. And then all of the good journalists, where actually the BBC offer some value, they're just getting rid of them.
They're getting rid of them,
They're getting, the really, really good people are leaving.
Yeah. Well, listen, the BBC is in the deep doo-doo, as indeed is the Labour government, as indeed are a lot of other people around the public sector. We'll bring you more on the real reason why this is going to be the year of common sense. We'll be talking throughout this show. This is Morning Glory. We'll see you after the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 2 minutes past 7. 1 hour of the show already underway. It is 4 glorious hours, of course, of Morning Glory every single weekday morning now from 6 a.m. until 10. Julie Hartley-Brewer's back at 10 this morning. You won't want to miss that at all. We'll be talking this morning, of course, an awful lot about what has happened over the last few days over the course of the grooming gang story. People want to call it rape gangs. We, of course, have had all manner of different conversations about this. We had one victim, actually, on last week who said that she prefers to use the word grooming gangs to rape gangs because it's more than just rape. It is in fact grooming. It is in fact taking children and making them absolutely and utterly bend to the will of a series of beastly and ghastly, awful rapists and murderers and people who are really, really beyond the pale of any kind of civilised behaviour whatsoever. Something is going to have to be done, and this entire storm which has been created around the grooming gangs over the past week or so by Elon Musk is a thankful thing that he has done. Lots of people think that Elon Musk is right when he criticises Nigel Farage. Many of you, though, of course, think he's entirely wrong to do so. Nigel Farage has built the Reform Party up from nothing. He has made it electable. He has made it now a force to be reckoned with in British politics. He has made it a possibility that he could become the first Reform Prime Minister in history. He has also made it possible for the lock that Labour and the Conservative parties have had on politics in this country for several decades could now be broken, and it could be broken by reform with Nigel Farage at the head of it. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We want to hear from you. We'll be speaking to Elon Musk's father later on in the show. We'll be speaking to Richard Tice from Reform UK as well. We want to hear your views too. Here's how you do it.
Morning, Mike. Elaine here, staying in the beautiful city of York.
Morning, mate. Calling from Ayrshire here.
Morning, Mike. I'm fuming this morning.
Morning, Mike. Simon in North Wales.
Hi, Mike. Jane from Kidderminster here.
Oh, just found a hairdryer, Mike. Maybe we can fix the foundation.
Fix the foundations, indeed. He's back, of course, from his holiday in Madeira, where he was roundly booed, where he jumped the queue for a toboggan, where basically he issued a statement saying that, yeah, we will continue to fix the foundations. He's coming back to fix the NHS, of course, where he's decided to cancel a load more appointments in order to create more appointments. We're not quite sure how that's going to work. We'll try and explain it to you coming up over the course of the next couple of hours. Bill in Cheshire says this: Elon Musk will continue to be a loose cannon until the 20th of January. After that date, the only important voice in town will be trumped. He will only allow the Don to lead the family. End of. I think that's very wise. Well said. Coming up, Sunil Sharma joins us, political commentator, host of the Rational Voices with Sunil podcast. We've got much, much else to do. Justin Welby's last day as the Archbishop of Canterbury. Should he not shuffle off out the House of Lords as well? Why on earth should we be paying this guy to appear 300 plus quid a day when he feels like turning up in the House of Lords with some tea and crumpet? I don't think so. This is Talk. Now, let's remind ourselves of what's been happening over the course of the last few days and hours, over the last week or so, because Elon Musk started agitating, shall we say, about the grooming gang story, and has done incredibly well to raise awareness, not only for the people who didn't know what was going on in the first place, but also to help those who have been complaining and who have been absolutely focused on this story for weeks and months and years. Here's what he had to say on Saturday at a reform meeting in Chelmsford.
He's got Elon, who is a proper hero, who believes in free speech. And free speech doesn't mean you agree with every single word that everyone says, but it means you have a platform and the right to excuse it.
And, of course, he was then asked on Laura Kunsberg's show this was on Sunday morning, about some of the things that Elon Musk has been saying about Keir Starmer and about Jess Phillips.
And is his friend, Elon Musk, now your friend, and is he going to give you millions of pounds?
Well, that's a real question, isn't it? Now, forget about the $100 million being talked about in the newspapers.
Are you going to give you money?
That is for the birds.
Is he going to give you money?
He may well do. He may well do. But it's got to be legal. He's got to be comfortable with it. He may well give us money. Whether he does or not, I'll tell you what he gives us. With huge numbers of young people, he makes us look cool.
Is the reason you hope he's going to give you money, is that why you don't want to criticise him?
I think I've made it perfectly clear that I don't agree with everything he stands for, but I do believe in free speech. I think he's a hero, and I said that well before any potential money was offered.
And we'll be speaking to Elon Musk's father a little bit later on in this show. We will also be speaking to Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform. But let's see what Nigel Farage had to say when he was asked again by Laura Kuenssberg about the money.
But would you tell Elon Musk that he is wrong? So I know you've distanced yourself from his comments about Tommy Robinson.
Do you know what? Real friends, when they meet face to face, have conversations, and they agree to agree, and sometimes they agree to disagree. And that is what open society and free speech is all about.
And shortly thereafter, it was issued by Elon Musk, this tweet: the Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. Now, that happened yesterday afternoon. An awful lot of people were quite taken aback by it. Lots of people said, oh, this is the beginning of the end of reform. Some people in the Labour Party thought, oh, this is going to be great news for them because it means that we cannot be in any way sidestepped or pushed out of the way by reform. But Nigel Farage once again put out his tweet, and this was yesterday afternoon around about 3 o'clock. Well, this is a surprise, he said. Elon is a remarkable individual, but on this I am afraid I disagree. My view remains that Tommy Robinson is not right for reform, and I never sell out my principles. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we currently sit. An awful lot of you, I think, will agree that Nigel Farage is the man to lead the Reform Party to victory, because others who say that it could be Rupert Lowe, it could be Richard Tice, it could be any number of other people. Nigel Farage is the Reform Party. He's the reason that they got elected. He's the reason they got 5 MPs into Parliament. If you remember, he wasn't going to run as an MP at the beginning of Reform's campaign, and as soon as he announced that he did it on this very show. And as soon as he did, the Reform Party was galvanised, 4.5 million people voted for them, and the rest is history, ladies and gentlemen. But let's talk to Sunil Sharma and find out what he makes of it all. Sunil, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Fascinating times we live in. I mean, you never quite know what's around the corner. What do you make of this spat between Elon Musk and Nigel Farage?
Well, I think Elon deserves so much credit for what he's done with the grooming gang situation. I think the amount of attention he's drawn to it over X, Twitter, has been incredible. Yeah. It's something that's barely been covered across any other media outlets aside from you guys here and maybe GB News. Aside from that, I think it's been barely covered. So it's amazing what he's done in terms of raising attention on that. And there's something that should have been done a long time ago. Yeah. With the Musk and Farage situation, I think it's a tough one. Elon Musk is known for doing this sort of thing in terms of going on Twitter or going on X and, basically saying what he thinks and saying it unfiltered. He said it about his own car in terms of Tesla before when the stock prices drastically dropped. He said negative things about his own company, his own people, multiple times. He did it once on a Joe Rogan podcast. So it's quite Elon Musk-like behaviour in terms of just speaking his thoughts. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think Reform obviously needs to just stay strong as a political party and almost be like, thank you, you're doing amazing work, but we are going to govern how we decide to govern. And I think I was listening in one of the viewers who messaged in when it was, when it becomes January the 20th, I think there'd be a very much different Elon Musk when you've got the Donald Trump as president. I think that will change the dynamic. Yeah. For now, I think is that kind of he's almost off the chains. He can say what he wants, do what he wants, which has been largely, I would still argue, been for the greater good of Britain so far, what Elon's done. And yeah, hopefully long may that continue.
I think so. But it also gives Nigel Farage an opportunity here, I think, doesn't it? To be, and I read this piece this morning by Tim Stanley in The Telegraph, to be a sort of a slightly bigger statesman figure rather than just being a kind of a loose cannon on X or on Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Because some of the things that Elon Musk was beginning to say about Keir Starmer and about Jess Phillips might have been considered to be slightly over the top. I know there are a lot of people that think Starmer's, certainly responsible for some of the stuff that didn't happen, and Jess Phillips should be doing a better job at all of that. But to sort of suddenly call for the locking up of these people, you might say it might have been more difficult for Farage to stand aside that, if you like, and actually agree with it. What he did very carefully and cleverly was to say, look, I don't have to agree with absolutely everything he says, and he kind of intimated that he might not agree with some of the language either. But it's pretty typical, isn't it, of British media to criticise Elon Musk for his language rather than criticise the people who are actually doing the raping.
Well, the British media made a bigger deal out of Elon Musk's tweet towards Nigel Farage than the fact that 250,000 girls have been groomed and raped over the last 10, 15 years. They made a much bigger deal about Elon Musk, a billionaire, making comments to Nigel Farage than what's happening in the UK, which really sums up the importance of the pair of them in terms of Farage and Musk. The thing I would say with regards to Farage and Reform is the Tommy Robinson situation almost the elephant in the room. I do think the way they addressed his supporters as almost like them lot or this lot, I think that was maybe a bit of a, if you like, an error in judgment. I think it's wrong to demonize people who, whether you like Tommy Robinson or you don't, I just think it was wrong to demonize his group of supporters and people who follow him. I think they could have handled that a lot better. It's fine to say, he's not going to be part of our administration, part of our team, but I think the way they handled that, I think, was particularly poor and wasn't necessarily the right way of handling it. I think that was probably what is the reason I think Elon Musk has spiraled like this and had his anger towards Farage. I think they could have handled that a lot better.
And do you think that is possibly the fact that they're just a very young political organisation, and perhaps it's a very small political organisation which is run in a way unlike any other, because it is, I mean, people have described Reform as a bit of a cult of personality. It's about Nigel Farage, he's the leader of the party, it's all about him. I mean, is that what you think is the problem?
No, I think, Reform is essentially a start-up political party, right? They're like a startup business, and when you have a startup business, it's largely around the founder, the main person. It's all centered on that person's vision, and as time goes on, you sort of make it more democratic. You bring more people in. You sort out the voting system, which I know there was problems last election. They're a very young new party, and they're going to have teething problems. They're going to have mistakes within each other, and it's a new organization essentially that are now trying to take on two massive parties that have been around for close to 100, one over 100 years. You have one close to 100. It's going to take time for them to pick up speed and they are going to make some of these team problems next. So I think it's unfair the way media is going after any sort of problem that happens with Reform, especially considering these sort of mistakes are still happening within Labour and Conservative parties, and especially since some of the most serious issues have been largely ignored, especially with what we've seen with the grooming gang scandal. The amount that has been ignored just demonstrates to you why people are so angry, and even more important reason why we do actually have to almost open up the political platform. Which brings us back to Keir Starmer, because Keir Starmer returns from his holiday today. There's going to be a debate in Westminster Hall over whether there should be another election. We know that that's more kind of, for sort of window dressing than anything else, and we don't expect anything major to come from it. But it's a kind of embarrassment for the Prime Minister. Also, he's now saying, because of Elon Musk, that he's going to get the Labour Party and the government to somehow operate the recommendations of the Jay report from 2 years ago. But until this week, he was never going to do anything about it. Crazy. I mean, it seems like he's been on more than just this. This doesn't seem like his first holiday. I find that so surprising that this is his first holiday. I don't know what he's done in the last 6 months. This has been like a really terrible period for United Kingdom. And why has it taken Elon Musk, the person who's in America, to bring such attention to what's gone on in Britain for the last 10 plus years? And it's clear that he wouldn't have done anything had he not drawn attention, which again just shows the importance of Elon, Nigel Farage and these people, because this wouldn't have been addressed if it wasn't for them. It's a real problem for the Labour Party. I think there is a serious, I've been saying a lot, even on this show previously, there's lack of ideas, there's lack of principles, there's lack of, all this sort of stuff. But this is just pure incompetence. This is...
I think it's worse than that, though, isn't it? Because it's not just incompetence, it's deliberate obfuscation, it's deliberate avoidance, it's deliberate kind of, pushing things to the back of the priority list, because we keep hearing from Keir Starmer, we've had to make tough decisions, we've had to come in and fix the problems that the nation faces, we've had to take priorities and lead from the front and all of that. And until this moment, not once has grooming gangs been mentioned, not once has a crackdown on these Pakistani men who should be being deported. None of that's happened.
It's crazy, a lot of the stuff, like I say, I know we had the inquiry that the information that's 255, but a lot of this has been going on for so long. Like the stats and data is there. If you look on terms of the influence of Pakistani people and some of the stuff that's gone on, whether it's in Bradford with that sort of cousin marriages, all the data is all out there. I've been on this show, GB News, and people have talked about this for a long time, but every time you do mention it, you're called Islamophobic, and it's people like Sir Keir Starmer's cabinet, people like the people he surrounds himself, that don't allow for these conversations to happen. So it's a clear thing that they've decided to deliberately ignore. They put the interest interests of a very select minority of people at the heart of their government, at the heart of what they've done for the last, their policies, what they believe in for the last 10, 15 years. They're stuck in this sort of, they don't understand what's really going on in this country. And I think this is a real testament to even now where we're still, it feels as if it's, the grooming scandal is being talked more by the likes of Elon, Reform and other people than our political party who should be making this decision. He should have released a statement straight away once this came about. He should have been doing the inquiry in the first place. He should have been the one taking control of this, not third parties. But it shows where the priorities of this government are, and it's not, in my opinion, for the interests of the wider country. I think it's just for a minority of people who this doesn't affect, like a lot of the stuff that we've talked about previously, whether it's flying to Baku, whether it's the climate change policy, net zero. These issues don't affect, they don't make a difference to his friends, his cabinet, his group of people, but it affects everyone else. It makes the rest of the country poorer, more unsafe. For Keir Starmer, this makes no difference, and I think it's really reflective in what he's doing right now.
Absolutely right. Sunil, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Sunil Sharma there, political commentator, host of the Rational Voices with Sunil podcast. I mean, you have to say, Keir Starmer doesn't want to talk about grooming gangs. He doesn't want to have to address it, but he's being forced to address it by Elon Musk. It's as simple as that. Mel in Swansea says, Mike, fabulous to hear your voice. We've missed you. I truly believe this spat with Elon and Nigel is a smokescreen. Elon is a very, very clever man, and look what's happened. Everyone on the planet is now talking about reform and Nigel. This is what he's good at. Nigel is the only person to lead reform into the winning number 10 seat, says Mel in Swansea. I think that's right. Coming up, we're going to talk some more about what Keir Starmer's about to announce and what Wes Streeting's going to announce today, which is new improvements to the NHS, which, quite frankly, will not make a halfpenny's worth of difference whatsoever. They're basically going to create more appointments by cancelling some appointments. And if you think that's a good idea, wait to hear the rest of it. Also, coming up, we're going to talk about Justin Trudeau, who might be giving up his job as leader of Canada in the next few days. If that's not a mark in the right direction for the year of common sense, I don't know what is. We're going to be speaking as well to Simon Calder, our man in the snowdrift, who's going to be telling us exactly how bad the weather's going to get for your travelling plans. This is Talk.
We have an elite, middle-class, chattering class, university-educated bunch of people who think that immigration, illegal immigration, the development, the mass kind of bolstering of demographics and the population can only be a good thing. Now, this is just completely stupid, of course, and we see the health service crumbling.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:23. I'm here, of course, all the way through until 10 for glorious hours of Morning Glory every single weekday morning. The sun is not quite up as I look out onto the River Thames. I can see the lights are still on Tower Bridge, so it's a bit dark at the moment, isn't it? It's a bit nasty. It's been a bit cruel and damp and wet and snowy and generally wintry. We'll talk to Simon Calder in a moment, who's at Gatwick Airport. That's had its fair share of problems ever since the new year and just before it, in fact. But let's get a voice note from Nick first.
Morning, Mike. It's Nick Moore from Loughborough. With every day that passes, Keir Starmer faces closer the reality that his majority, whilst big, is actually tissue thin, and he's terrified of losing the Muslim vote. And regardless of Elon Musk's out-of-place comment, Nigel Farage will be the next Prime Minister of this country.
I think you're probably absolutely right there, Nick. I couldn't agree more with you. And, of course, the paper-thin majority that I've been talking about and the reason why I don't think Keir Starmer will be in for very long is once again backed up by a poll that went out of the weekend in which it said that more people than ever believe that Keir Starmer will not last a year, will not last until 2025. I mean, do you remember what they used to say about Donald Trump? They used to say, he'll never be president. Have you gone mad? And then he'll never be president again. And here we are, just about to welcome him as the 47th President of the United States of America. Now, you might remember that before he got elected, there was an awful lot of celebrities in America, and I say it like a celebrity with a soft T there in American, who wanted to leave the country. Let's have a look at this.
If Donald Trump wins, I'm going to be out of the country. Get him out.
Listen, if he wins, he won't have to worry about immigration. We'll all go back.
Get him out of here.
I will move to Spain.
Get the hell out of here. Where would you go? Canada. Bye-bye. Bye.
I'm 100% moving to Canada. I love Canada.
Bye-bye, darling.
I'd be an expatriate.
Bye-bye.
Trump win, I'm moving to Africa.
Bye-bye.
If any Republican gets nominated, I'm going to move to Canada with my entire family.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Maybe it's time for me to move.
Bye-bye. Okay?
Yeah. There's going to be some space in Canada as well, because Justin Trudeau looks like he's going to be quitting Canada as well. I don't know where he's going to go, but he's going to quit his job this week, we're told. By Wednesday, Justin Trudeau could be out. Now, if that doesn't make it the year of common sense beginning, I don't know what does. But let's check in with Simon Calder, travel correspondent to the Stars, a man that knows a thing or two about common sense. He's at Gatwick Airport this morning. Simon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike, and of course the nation celebrates your return.
Indeed.
Unfortunately, it's coincided with massive problems, particularly again at Manchester Airport. The airport announced in the past hour that it has closed again both runways because of snow.
Right.
That follows the 3-hour closure yesterday, which caused absolute mayhem. We had 15 diversions because there's a whole procession of long-haul flights coming into Manchester Airport in the morning. They ended up in Birmingham, in Glasgow and Gatwick, where I am right now, Heathrow, and even some in Shannon in the west of Ireland and in Paris. So that was bad enough yesterday. Today, the diversions have begun. The Qatar Airways flight from Doha has once again gone to Birmingham. I've just been checking on the progress of Emirates Flight 21 from Dubai to Manchester. That looks as though it's diverting as well. Not quite sure where yet. It's been holding for about the last 50 minutes. And I'm afraid things look as though they are going to get worse before they get back to normal.
Yes, because it's going to get colder, I believe, this week. It's going to be more snow. I mean, the south hasn't had too bad of a snow problem, but certainly from anywhere sort of north of Oxford, it looks pretty white out there, doesn't it?
It does, and unfortunately we're also seeing, even where it's not freezing, we're seeing flooding. That's closed the railway, for instance, between Leicester and Peterborough. Would you believe there's a fallen tree between Canterbury and Ramsgate, which is stopping trains there. As we were hearing in the traffic news, M25 anti-clockwise closed at Reigate because of a jackknife lorry, and the M5 in Gloucestershire also closed, and I'm afraid that's going to be the story of the day, and that's at a time where I calculate we had 150 flight cancellations yesterday, not just Manchester but also a dozen or so here at Gatwick, plus many more at Leeds Bradford Airport and Liverpool John Lennon Airport.
It's enough to stop you going on a plane over Christmas and New Year, so why not use the train instead? Oh, no, they're on strike. Yesterday, I think, was the first day for Avanti West Coast to have one of their Sunday strikes from the train managers or whatever they are who are going on strike. How did that all go, and what did that mean for people trying to get up and down the West Coast?
Well, actually, West Coast was all right yesterday. It's the one Sunday before June when you could catch a train without disruption. The train managers on Avanti West Coast will be walking out from this coming Sunday until the 25th of May inclusive, and that's going to knock out about three-quarters of the trains.
Right.
Where we had big problems yesterday was on the East Coast main line with LNER. That's the line which runs from Scotland via North East England and Yorkshire to London King's Cross, saying, please don't travel, delays, cancellations, why don't you use your ticket today? Grand Central did the same, so people will be doing that. Hopefully they will have a smoother journey. But look, the infrastructure in this country is famously susceptible to bad weather, and I'm afraid there's a lot of it here already and more on the way.
So are you saying, and I have a special interest in this because my son has to go back to Manchester next weekend, are you saying that it's all right to travel on the Sunday then? It's not too disruptive?
No. Yesterday was the only Sunday before June when you could travel on a Sunday without disruption. Sorry not to make that clear.
Oh, sorry.
But yes, we are going to see most trains cancelled. There will be a skeleton service, and certainly Manchester to London, that's likely to be an hourly train instead of 3 trains an hour. So they will be a little bit crowded, and similar thing, Birmingham and Crewe and Preston with 1 train an hour, and then the occasional train from Glasgow as well, but they're only going to be running between about 8 in the morning and 5 or 6 in the evening.
Yeah.
And that's a row about how much they get paid for working on their rest days.
When they had their strike on New Year's Eve, I noticed that the last train leaving London for Manchester was going at about 2:20 or something like that, something ridiculous. And the same coming back the other way. So they certainly know how to take the day off, don't they?
Well, they say that they've had a very strong vote against the offer, which would have seen them get £250 for working on a weekday, £300 for working on a day off during the weekend for an 8-hour shift. They say that's not enough. Bear in mind that the drivers get a flat £600 for working on their day off.
Unbelievable, isn't it? And they're not happy with that. Incredible stuff. Don't worry, Labour government will fill their boots, I'm sure, with whatever it is they want. One final one for you, Simon. If you wanted to stay at home and just drive around in London, just for the heck of things, you'd find that you were travelling at the slowest rate of anywhere in the entire European continent, because apparently London's roads are now the most congested in the whole of Europe. So well done, Sadiq Khan.
Well, look, a lot of people would say, and you're quite right, things are very, very slow if you're driving, but it's a number of people would actually say, well, if that's moving people onto public transport, that's probably a good thing, as long, of course, as that public transport works, which you and I have discussed once or twice. It doesn't always.
It doesn't really, no, does it? And they're just about to increase or introduce, finally, after a lot of arguments, toing and froing. In New York, they're going to be some congestion charge. So if you're travelling to New York now, you probably have to pay even more to come in from JFK or Newark, because there's going to be a congestion charge south of Central Park all the way down to the bottom of Manhattan.
Well, yes,
$9.
But congestion charges seem to work, Mike.
They don't.
In terms of the aims of these places.
But if a congestion charge works, Simon, why is the congestion in London worse than it was before they had the congestion charge?
Because they put in loads and loads and loads of road closures. I happen to live in a bit of South London, where since COVID, I mean, it's great if you happen to be a cyclist like me or a pedestrian. The traffic goes at about 3 miles an hour. That's less helpful if you're a driver, particularly if you're a professional driver driving a taxi, for instance. That's going to be very, very.
But surely for a congestion charge to be a success, you have to have no congestion, don't you? Isn't that the point?
Well, you have got low. Right. You look. I have seen the congestion charge in action. I live at a very, very busy junction. Traffic almost halved overnight when it first came in, and it's been dwindling ever since. And yes, you can say, well, that's terrible.
Why is the traffic so slow then?
Because it's not going very. It's basically held up by 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, with lots of traffic lights, roadworks, and so on.
No. You can't have it both ways, Simon, but I'm not. It's a winter of goodwill here, so we're not going to have a row about it. But anyway, we'll come back to it. I'll let you know what happens in New York when they put congestion charge in, see if the congestion disappears. I guarantee you it will not. But thank you very much indeed. Simon Calder there reporting into us from Gatwick Airport, where there's more trouble. If you're waiting for a flight to come in, there's a pretty good chance it's not coming. It might be getting diverted somewhere else. 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Joe, who's from Essex, wants to talk about Elon Musk. Joe, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael. Long-time listener.
Indeed. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much for calling. Happy New Year to you. What do you want to say?
And to you. Well, I just want to go through the history a bit of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, 2016, donated for and campaigned for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Invited into the Trump administration to work on electrifying the network. Came in, Trump pulls out of the Paris Agreement. Musk storms out, says disgrace, climate change is the most important thing on the planet. 2022, donated to and endorsed Joe Biden.
Yeah.
That went well. Then 2022 says that Trump should pull out of the primary because he's not got it anymore. He's too old and past it.
Okay.
2024, Kamala Harris announces that she wants to crack down on social media companies. Trump gets shot. All of a sudden, guess who backs Trump? Oh, look, it's Elon Musk, saving his dirty, grubby little skin. Then what happens? December 2024, decides, makes an announcement that he wants more HB1 visas to America because, quote, Americans aren't intelligent enough or hardworking enough. Causes a massive storm with the MAGA crowd. Calls Steve Bannon, the creator of MAGA, weak, inefficient and non-conservative. So all these people crying around the world that Elon Musk no longer supports Nigel Farage. He didn't support Trump. He's not going to last in Trump's thing. And then the clowns that are texting you saying we want Rupert Lowe or Ben Habib. Rupert Lowe is amazing at technical detail. If you listen to his speeches, they're a snore fest. And Ben Habib is so desperate for attention, he still calls himself the former deputy leader of Reform. He hasn't been there for a year. Get over yourself, mate.
Yeah. No, you make a very good point. I think, basically, that Elon Musk has done Nigel Farage a massive favour by sort of disendorsing him, if you like, because by doing that, Nigel Farage now can distance himself from him. He doesn't have to answer questions about the guy that's giving you money is calling all sorts of people horrible names, and he's having a go at Keir Starmer, and he's threatening to lock up Jess Phillips and calling her a witch. He doesn't have to apologise for that anymore, because he can go, well, he's having a go at me as well. What do you want from me?
Exactly.
Yeah. So in some ways it could be a masterstroke from Elon Musk, but I tend to go with your take on it, which is that he is a loose cannon, and he comes out with stuff. The first thing that enters his head comes out of his mouth.
Finally, Mike, in late December, Trump puts out a little video because obviously the MAGA crowd are going nuts about how Elon Musk has turned on Steve Bannon. Who does he endorse in that little message? There's two people. He endorses Steve Bannon, and the other person he endorses is Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
I'm cool with Trump still backing Nigel Farage. I don't think we need Musk.
No, I think that's right. Very, very interesting call. Joe, thank you very much indeed. Joe's done a bit of research there. Always good to know some facts when you come onto this show, and he's just told us a whole bunch of facts about what Elon Musk has done all the way back to 2016 when he donated money and supported Hillary Clinton. So for all of you people saying he knows more about the reform business than anybody else and he's right to back Tommy Robinson and that's why Elon Musk is a hero, well, did you know that he backed Hillary Clinton? Did you know that he gave her money? Did you know that he gave money to Joe Biden? He can do whatever he wants. He's a billionaire. He's a very famous individual. He's a fascinating individual, and I've been praiseworthy of him in the past, and I think he's done brilliantly to raise the issue of the grooming gangs and put Keir Starmer on the spot. But as Nigel Farage said yesterday, you don't have to agree with everything he says, and he doesn't have to be right about everything he says either, because he isn't. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. Just a word about this Elon Musk, Nigel Farage Reform Party debacle. My theory is that I don't actually think this is Elon that's running the account during UK time when he's called for Nigel to be deposed as Reform Party leader. I think this is his father, and the times when Elon's account has posted these anti-Farage posts on X is UK Times. So I think we might see a bit of a climb down on this, but I'm not sure. We'll see. That's my theory.
It's an interesting theory, but I'm going to have to say this, and I don't mean to be rude, Mark. It's absolute balderdash, I'm afraid, because Musk is in California. He's 8 hours behind. The tweet that he sent out yesterday was around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or just before, I think, which is certainly within time for him to be up and about in California. We're going to talk to Elon Musk's dad, actually, later on in this show, so I will put it to him that he's operating Elon Musk's Twitter account when Elon's asleep. I suspect he will deny that because I don't think it's true. But you never know. Anything's possible in this world. Mike says, Peter in Bromley, any word from Trump? Do you think Elon is testing Trump's loyalty to Nigel? I don't think so. I think the fact is that Elon Musk is just a very unpredictable guy, and I think he quite likes the idea that he's unpredictable. He revels in it. You know, he knows that there's an awful lot of people who look at him and think he's weird. He knows that, you know, people look at his private life and think it's strange. He's got a lot of children. Some of them talk to him, some of them don't. You know, I don't think that's relevant. Any of that is relevant. He's saying things that are provocative. Some things that are said which are provocative upset people. And this is obviously the way he's going. He's upset a bunch of people. He's also pleased a bunch of people. But the fact is that you can't rely on Elon Musk to say the things that you want him to say, because that's not the kind of guy he is. I said this on Plank of the Week last weekend when it went out on Friday night. You know, they can't control Elon Musk. The Labour government can control the police, they can control the councils, they can make sure that they shut down any conversations about certain things, but they can't shut down Elon Musk, because guess what? He runs X. And you get some people in the Labour Party now saying maybe they should shut it down. Maybe they should tell him to stop saying these things. Well, that's not going to work either. He can say what he likes. And I think Nigel Farage has shown himself to be a proper statesman by responding in the way that he has. We'll be talking to Richard Tice about this coming up as well from Reform in the next hour. This is Morning Glory.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:42. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, the end of time. No, not the end of time, until 10 o'clock. But it feels like that sometimes, doesn't it? Morning Glory, 4 glorious hours of it, all the way through until 10. Julie Hartley-Brewer returns at that moment, of course, with her stories from the holiday that she's just been on, and also her views on what's going on between Elon Musk and, of course, Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage. Richard Tice joins us just after 8 o'clock as well. We'll get his view on what's going on. And we'll be talking now, very shortly, to our favourite American TV presenter and radio personality, Ms. LaDonna Harvey. First, though, let's have a look at Joe Biden, because he's in his final swan song, if you like. Only a couple more weeks to go and he's out of a job, thankfully. Here he is wishing somebody a happy birthday over the weekend.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right.
Brilliant. Oh, can we have that again? That's just brilliant. He clearly doesn't know who it is he's wishing happy birthday to.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right.
Yeah, happy birthday, whoever you are. That's brilliant. Amazing. LaDonna's here. A very good morning to you, LaDonna. Happy New Year.
Good morning and Happy New Year. What's your name again?
Yeah, you know, that well-known friend of the family. I presume it's the guy standing to his right, is it? I don't know.
Oh, that's awful, and God knows I've forgotten people's names and sort of fudged through them as well, but not quite so publicly.
I think you could probably do slightly better than I mean, can't you? I mean, you can use. I mean, I'd rather call somebody the wrong name than do that, I think. Which I have done.
Joe Smith. It's Joe Smith's birthday.
Yeah.
Say hello to Joe Smith.
Say
Joe,
Joe. Yeah, something like that. Take a punt. You might get it right. You know, that's the thing. Only a few more days to go, I suppose, for Joe. And, you know, I was just asking, actually, looking back to, you know, January the 6th, 4 years ago, when all of that commotion happened, Donald Trump went out and made a speech. I was trying to work out whether there was something that happens on January the 6th when presidents change over, why that happened on January the 6th, because obviously it's January the 6th today. I mean, we're not expecting Biden to make any kind of speech of any kind, are we?
No, we're not expecting him to do anything of the kind. I mean, he may make a closing statement or something at the end of the presidency.
Right.
But, you know, that was at the end of a contentious election, and I think that the reason that it was of note, especially after what happened, was that it was seen as a provocation, basically, to, you know, fight the power or whatever. I don't know that it was. However, that's the way that it was construed, and that's the way that it was taken by some of those people who decided to, you know, we're gonna fight the election, we're gonna fight the results, and we're gonna go in and we're gonna take over. And they didn't. They caused a ruckus. A couple of people were hurt. A couple were killed, and basically did nothing.
Right.
It did nothing.
And so now we sort of have what you might call, I suppose, a smooth transition. At this moment in time, I guess there's already quite a few of the new Trump appointees working inside the White House, right?
Sure, yeah. When you have this kind of a transition, you have a transition team. There's one on both sides, actually. And those people are expected to work together to bring everyone up to speed on what's happening in the country and how to, you know, continue to move forward in whatever way. You know, it's not going to be the same way, obviously, but to continue to move forward in a way that is at least cohesive and makes some sort of sense.
Right.
And with government, it's a huge operation. So you have virtually everyone who's in government as a part of this process.
Yes, and I guess that's true, including perhaps, or not perhaps, Elon Musk. Elon Musk getting a lot of attention on this side of the pond, as you probably know, for some of his statements, which have been very much welcomed, actually, at the start of his campaign to highlight the grooming gangs story and how ridiculous it has been in this country. And a lot of people thought that was brilliant. But he then started to kind of go slightly, you know, off the track, if you like, and started attacking Keir Starmer and started attacking Jess Phillips, one of the ministers for safeguarding, and is now decided to attack Nigel Farage as well. Is that getting much play over there?
It's not getting a lot of play, although Farage has been a huge supporter of incoming President Trump.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit surprising. But remember, Elon's his own guy, and he's also a little nuts. And so, he blurps out whatever comes into his head on Twitter.
Right.
And half the time it doesn't make any sense. And sometimes it makes sense. And sometimes a stopped clock is right twice a day. So, he's one of those guys.
I mean, he's a very clever guy, but he's very eccentric,
absolutely.
isn't he? He's very eccentric.
Absolutely. But he doesn't speak for President Trump. He speaks for Elon Musk. He doesn't have to speak for anyone. He's worth $1 billion.
Exactly right. And then finally, Joe Biden, as one of his final acts, in addition to pardoning his own son, has decided to hand out a load of medals, the highest civilian honour, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He gave it to an interesting collection of people over the weekend, starting with Hillary Clinton and ending with Bono.
Right. And in between, you had Denzel Washington and George Soros.
Yeah. And Lionel Messi.
You have all of
What's he doing?
I'm not really sure. I think the most interesting choice is George Soros, who has been a contentious political figure in the United States because he throws money behind far left candidates, specifically to do with the justice system.
Right.
He has funded George Gascon in Los Angeles, for instance, who is no longer going to be the DA in Los Angeles, and kind of this defund the police effort. He's not. It's just an interesting choice. But basically what he does is throw around political money. Yeah. That's his contribution to society. At least with Bono, he gave us some great songs.
Well, he did do that. Yeah, absolutely right. But listen, great to talk to you, LaDonna. Well done. Thank you very much indeed. LaDonna Harvey, iHeart Media presenter over in the US of A, with a very strange period of time because it is the transition period. Joe Biden's basically wishing happy birthday and singing happy birthday to people he doesn't know, whose names he doesn't know, and he's handing out medals of honour to people like Lionel Messi, Bono and Anna Wintour, the editor of Vogue magazine. Nobody's quite sure what he's doing. I don't think he's quite sure what he's doing either. Coming up, though, we're going to talk about the NHS. Our favourite GP is here, Dr. Dean Eggett. Ask him about Keir Starmer's plan to re-nationalise and revitalise the NHS. He's going to cancel a load of appointments and create a load of new ones. And apparently that's going to make a difference. Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. This is Talk.
it's a mixed bag, but a lot of the country, David, covered by warnings of some sort, including, as I say, that Amber Alert, which says that the Met Office describes as an alert, which means travel could be impacted. So you should potentially think about changing your travel plans over the next 24, 48 hours.
And just in terms of that, I assume the usual advice, just keep an eye on the travel alerts, make sure you contact the operator, that kind of stuff.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
7:53, welcome back to Morning Glory. This from Bill in Aberdeen. He says, morning, Mike. This Farage-Musk thing, I think this has been planned between the two of them. This will boost Farage by distancing himself from Tory Robinson and the far right and remove attention from a large Musk donation. Watch a Musk donation soon, and both making up. Well, I think you're not entirely wrong there, Bill. We'll be talking to Elon Musk's dad a little bit later on in the show. We'll find out what he knows and what he's been told by Elon. They are in close touch with each other, so we've spoken to them on several occasions. Let's talk now, though, to our favourite doctor, Dr. Dean Eggett, GP, CEO of Doncaster's local medical committee, of course, because today Keir Starmer returns to the United Kingdom. I think he came back over the weekend from his trip to Madeira. And one of the things he's going to do is unveil a brand new system for making the NHS work better. And this is sort of the high points of it, right? Millions more appointments to be created through a plan to get people the treatment they need quicker. I mean, you can say that, doesn't really mean anything. Up to 500,000 more appointments made available each year thanks to greater access to community diagnostic centres and new or expanded surgical hubs. Well, we wait to see where they're going to come from. Greater patient choice over follow-up care as part of a drive to open up 1 million appointments alongside better use of tech and other action to save another 1 million missed appointments. And reforms mark the next step in delivering the government's plan for change to deliver for working people. There's those words again, to deliver for working people. Well, you're going to cancel a load of appointments and then create a load more. That seems to be about the size of it. Let's find out from Dean what he makes of it. Dean, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike, and Happy New Year to you and your team.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you as well. Tell me, what do you make of this? I mean, it seems to be, you know, once again, an awful lot of gobbledygook, an awful lot of kind of, this is what we're going to do, this is what we plan to do, this is what will happen. Not actually anything concrete, for example. I don't know when they're building these community hubs, where they're going to be, how it's going to work for you guys as GPs.
Thankfully, Mike, I know a little bit about it because actually none of this is new. We might be in a new year, but there are no new ideas here. These community diagnostic hubs were actually brought in by the last government. We've had them for several years already, and it's essentially where your local hospital has an outpatient department somewhere closer into the community, closer to you, rather than in the main hospital body building. So your GP can refer you there to have tests done rather than having to go into the main hospital.
Okay.
So there's nothing new there. That's been around for a few years.
So is that like a sort of walk-in centre then or something?
Well, yes and no. In theory, it's closer to you. It's easier to access. The transport should be better, but it's not a walk-in service. You need to be referred to these different hubs, either via your GP or via the hospital. So it is kind of like just being referred for a test, just like you would have been done to a hospital in the past, but different building, same people.
Right. So if they're already there and they're already operational, how is their introduction actually even possible, and how is anything going to change then?
Well, the way that this can be spun is that they're not all there yet. And in theory, they're not all on stream. So a lot of the places have been selected, a lot of the buildings have been made, but they're not necessarily yet up and running. So although they've been ready to go for a couple of years, some of them are not necessarily yet up and running. So you could say, you know, in theory, that a few million appointments are going to be created by having these functioning. But the question that I would then ask is, well, who was doing these tests before? Because this isn't new staff. this isn't necessarily new equipment. It's just the same test being done in a different place.
Right.
So I don't see any genuine extra capacity here. Yes, it's easier for patients because you don't have to go to the big building in the middle of the city. It's definitely easier for commuting, but I don't see any new appointments here.
No, and also their big plan, which is to get people's waiting list time down, which apparently is something they want to do over the course of the next 4 years. So by 2029, you won't have to wait more than 18 weeks. I mean, it's almost impossible for them to make that promise at this level, isn't it, at this stage? Because apart from anything else, in 4 years' time, there's going to be a lot more people here.
Yes. Again, this is capacity and playing with statistics. So let's say, for example, if you have a huge waiting list down in London for perhaps a year, and maybe there's half a year waiting list in York, and you get to choose and say, well, I'll go to York because York is faster. Well, York's waiting list will go up a little bit and London's waiting list will go down. So the waiting lists across the UK will even out. But again, there's no new capacity there. It's not necessarily that everyone is benefiting. It's that some areas will benefit and some areas will lose out because there's no new capacity being created as far as I can see in these headlines. So unless the government is planning to find some new clinicians, some new hospital beds, even some new hospitals, I don't see any new capacity being created here.
No, I mean, they talk about cancelling a lot of needless operations and needless appointments, but again, what do they mean by that? And surely if they're needless appointments, they don't need to cancel them because they shouldn't be being made in the first place.
Yes, you know, we've seen this over the years too, rationing by the NHS, and we have to be very open and honest about this. This is the NHS saying, I'm sorry, but we don't think it's worth spending the cash on you for this problem. And this might be, for example, if you've got a swelling and a lump that's bothering you, it's not necessarily shortening your life, but the NHS might say, well, that's quite expensive. Somebody else needs that operation, so we're just not going to do that for you. So this is a way of rationing different types of access to healthcare. We already do that on a large number of health problems. It looks to be getting worse into the future. But honestly, we probably should have that conversation. Should we be cutting off lumps and bumps because it feels wrong for you when somebody else is waiting for a knee operation? Actually, we do have to have that genuine conversation because there just isn't the capacity and resource to go around for everybody.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with more. Well, good to talk to you, Dr. Dean. It's ever common sense personified. Dr. Dean Eggett there, GP, CEO of Doncaster's local medical committee. Well, guess what? Keir Starmer's big idea. Let's open some new regional hubs. They're already there. So it's not his big idea at all. Let's cancel some needless operations. Well, you shouldn't be making needless operations because by definition they're needless. So that's not going to get you any extra capacity. According to Dr. Dean, there's nothing new in this whole package of measures by Keir Starmer, which he's come back all the way from holiday to announce because it's the next big thing. So basically, you can take all of his NHS reforms and put them straight in the bin. Don't bother. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 2 minutes past 8. It is a brand new year. It is, as I have declared it, the year of common sense. It's when everything starts to come into what I can only describe as a perfect circle of common sense. We will, of course, be the world headquarters of it here, and people will be sucked into the vortex as the weeks and months go on. Justin Trudeau, for a start, is apparently going to step down. That's a step in the right direction, isn't it, for the rest of the world? Donald Trump's going to become president. I mean, what more could you want? Nigel Farage is still looking like he might be the next Prime Minister of this country. Richard Titan's here with us this morning. Very good morning to you,
Very
Richard.
good morning to you. Happy New Year.
A very happy New Year to you as well. We'll be talking about matters arising from Mr. Elon Musk's tweets. He's still tweeting now, actually, about locking up Keir Starmer and all the rest of it. There he is, standing in happier times with Nigel and Nick Candy from Reform. We've got all sorts of questions that we want to ask to Richard. You've got all sorts of questions, but many of you saying, you know, Elon Musk has kind of lost the plot. He's out there, he's eccentric, he's brilliant, he's a fantastically successful individual, but is he really the right man to run any kind of individual party in the United Kingdom? The answer, obviously, is not. Let's get a voice note montage and hear what you've been saying.
Morning, guys. Fantastic show, as always.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire.
Good morning, Mike. James here.
Hi, Mike. Happy New Year. Missed you this last week.
Morning, Mike. Glad you're back in the common sense seat.
This is the Common Sense Seat, the world headquarters of it. Yeah, we'll be talking about Musk. We'll also be talking... We've just had a doctor on, a GP, who has completely trashed Keir Starmer's new NHS reforms in 3 minutes. That's all it took, because everything that he's suggesting he's going to do has already been done by the previous government, and everything he thinks he wants to do isn't possible to do. So there we are. So Keir Starmer might as well have stayed on holiday, had another toboggan ride over in Madeira. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. So here we are, the first proper week, January the 6th. Richard Tice, very good morning to you.
Very good morning. It's a little bit murky and sort of gloomy out there, but we have to be optimistic going into the new year, as you say. Well, a new year of common sense.
Reform can't seem to get off the front pages.
Well, that's right. I mean, and it sort of started literally on Christmas Day, on Boxing Day.
Yes.
When the leader of His Majesty's opposition decided to take us on and accuse us of being lying and fraudulent about our membership numbers.
Wasn't she asked to apologise?
We got a number of different media channels and journalists in to check the actual database, the back end, proved that we were right, she was completely wrong, and just said, look, we all make mistakes, just apologise, Kemi. She's refused to do that, so Nigel announced over the weekend that we're going to make our own constituency seat a key target at the next general election, just to give Kemi a little bit of something to think about.
And also, because of her actions on Boxing Day, she managed to gain herself the first Plank of the Week nomination and victory. So she's now the first Plank of the Week of the year is Kemi Badenoch.
Well, and she did us a favour, is the truth, because actually, I mean, look at our membership numbers. We went through their number of, give or take, 130-odd thousand, and now we're up at 170,000 plus and still rising. So we think actually she personally was responsible for adding tens of thousands of members who are outraged by
and just
her
when
suggestion.
Things were settling down a bit, Elon Musk suddenly decided to start attacking, and with great success, by the way, the whole grooming gangs issue. And I think he did the right thing there, put Keir Starmer very much on the back foot. Starmer's now come out and said, oh, well, now what we're going to do is we're going to enact the J report, all of the things that were recommended in that 2 years ago, we're suddenly now going to action them. I don't know why suddenly now he wants to action them, but we're going to expect to hear something from him today on that.
I mean, you know, this grooming, this child rape scandal, you know, I've been describing it as one of the most horrific scandals to afflict the UK in the last
awful,
2 or 3 decades.
The more you read about it, it's just incredible.
What's extraordinary is that it sort of hits the news and then disappears. But over 2 decades, I mean, it's as bad or worse than the infected blood scandal and also the post office scandal. And look, I just don't see any rationale for not having a national public inquiry. And those who say, well, we've got lots of local inquiries and there's already been
we've already had one.
We've already had... The truth is, when you actually dig into the detail, and the devil's in the detail, this national inquiry, actually, it only looked at 6 towns. We think there are some 50 towns that have been involved. And of those 6 towns, none of them were the towns about which we've already heard about. The Telfords, the Oldhams, the Rochdales, the Rotherhams. of this world. So actually, the existing inquiry, frankly, was very limited and doesn't go anywhere near far enough. And what Mr. Musk and others, and we've been saying, and we're calling for a public inquiry, is that we're concerned about who knew what when, who genuinely covered something up and didn't. And I think it's pretty extraordinary. And I can reveal exclusively on this show, having talked about this yesterday morning, I was contacted yesterday evening by email by a councillor who shall currently remain nameless from Oldham, slightly warning me off, saying, nothing to see here, don't worry.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I'm digging into it.
Interesting.
And I should be making inquiries, but I'm thinking, hang on. So I'm just sort of making a general request for a public inquiry, and all of a sudden I'm getting an email from an Oldham councillor that says, nothing to see here, Mr. Tice, go away.
And now that we know what Simon Danchuk's been saying about him being warned off specifically by Labour, leaders in Rochdale, we also know from Lucy Allen that she was not only warned off by Labour politicians, but also warned off by the police, who basically said this will be bad for your career.
And also, it appears, warned off by other Tory MPs. So, I think we need to know why were so many people in senior positions, whether it be police forces, whether it be local councillors, whether it be in mainstream political parties, why were they basically trying to sort of prevent due process and analysis and exposure? What were they covering up? Their own incompetence or what?
Yes.
I think we've got to know.
I think so, and an awful lot more is now known about what happened after that particular report 2 years ago was published. So that report, in a way, is out of date anyway. But let's talk about Nigel Farage now as well, because, of course, he was on Laura Kuenssberg yesterday, and he was being asked about his relationship with Elon Musk. He was being asked about some of the things that Elon Musk had been saying. And let's have a look at what he told Laura Kuenssberg yesterday.
And is his friend, Elon Musk, now your friend, and is he going to give you millions of pounds?
Well, that's a real question, isn't it? Now, forget about the $100 million being talked about in the newspapers.
Are you going to give you money?
That is for the birds.
Is he going to give you money?
He may well do. He may well do. But it's got to be legal. He's got to be comfortable with it. He may well give us money. Whether he does or not, I'll tell you what he gives us. With huge numbers of young people, he makes us look cool.
Is the reason you hope he's going to give you money, is that why you don't want to criticise him?
I think I've made it perfectly clear that I don't agree with everything he stands for. But I do believe in free speech. I think he's a hero, and I said that well before any potential money was offered.
And, of course, Laura Kuenssberg more upset about the things that Elon Musk is actually saying and the words that he's using than she is about what actually happened during the grooming scandal times, and what was actually happening.
And this is the point. It seems to me that lefty journalists, they're more worried about a little bit of hurty words, offensive language, diddums. Actually, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen. It can be a pretty tough old world out there. But what we want is action, and I think that's what voters want. They want, on this child rape scandal, kicked into the long grass. They want it sorted. That's why when I've been calling for a public inquiry, I say, let's have a prompt, rapid inquiry that covers everything. And, you heard from Nigel there, look, and that's the joy. I mean, wouldn't life be boring if we all always agreed with each other? And you can be friends with someone, but you can disagree with them.
Well, you can be. And he said later on in the interview, he said, well, I'm going to be going to the inauguration on the 20th of January, and I'll be having a conversation with Elon Musk and about a great many things, which will probably, presumably include the fact that, endorsing Tommy Robinson and asking for him to be released from prison is probably not what we would want you to be doing.
I mean, I'm like Nigel, I'm a big Musk fan. I use his products. I think they're amazing. And he's got serious investments in the UK. So he's every right to be interested in the growth of the UK economy, how it performs, and the cost of doing business here. But what Nigel demonstrated in his reply to Mr. Musk's tweet yesterday, I think, in the afternoon.
Well, because that was the other thing. For those people who have been under a rock for the last 24 hours, shortly after Nigel's appearance on the BBC, Elon Musk sent a tweet out in which he said that Nigel Farage doesn't got what it takes, he needs to be replaced as leader of reform, which must have taken even Nigel Farage by surprise.
Well, the first thing you check is that, it's for real.
It's actually him,
because in the world of AI, you have to double-check anything. But look, the reality is, Nigel needs to be the next Prime Minister of this country. He has total, unequivocal support of all of us. And, Mr. Musk, he's entitled to his opinion. That's the joy. I mean, it says, my response was, thank God for free speech. We can agree, on some things, we can disagree on others. But here's the real point. What Nigel has shown And what we've shown is we are people of conviction and principle, and we are not for sale to anyone. And that is the key point. And that's why I think we're going up in the polls. That's why our membership is soaring, because people realise we've been around the block a few times. We know what makes businesses work. We know what needs to be done to make the country work. And we've got real, genuine conviction and principle. I think people like that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from the reaction we're getting this morning from our audience, many of whom would have voted Reform in the last election, you know, they're saying that Nigel's done the right thing. Elon Musk is all very well, but he's not necessarily the man that should be dictating policy to anybody, whether it's Keir Starmer or Nigel Farage. But I mean, is Nigel a bit disappointed? Because, I mean, it's not what you expect to hear from a friend, particularly if it's something that comes out of the blue in public. I mean, it's not as if you called him and said, but I think he's screwing this up.
One should expect that from Mr. Musk, because he surprised throughout his whole career, from his very first most successful investment to what he's achieved with Tesla. Everyone said it couldn't be done. He did it. Everybody said it couldn't be done to make Twitter and then call it X, to make that work. He did it. Everyone said he couldn't make it work with SpaceX. He did it. So he always surprises, and so you shouldn't be surprised when he surprises you.
Right.
That's the reality.
But will Nigel be worried about what he might be saying to Donald Trump, though, perhaps?
Look, I think at the end of the day, the President-elect is a man of his own mind, and, again, he surprises people, but he and Nigel have got a very strong relationship. Nigel's been incredibly loyal and worked very closely with the President-elect, and the most important thing, actually, is that hopefully that will bear fruit in terms of, with the discussions over trade deals, over tariffs. Looking forward this year, that's going to be very significant. The fact that, thankfully, we're outside the EU, so that if Mr. President Trump puts tariffs on EU goods, then hopefully, through the good offices of Nigel, then the United Kingdom can avoid that. That's all to be discussed and negotiated going forwards. But, you know, Nigel's made that offer to the Labour government, saying, look, in the national interest, if you want me to help, I'm happy to.
Right. But Starmer, of course, has not gone down that road, has he? Because he's too busy reworking the NHS.
I'm in the spirit of the New Year optimism, Mike. I'm patient. I'm saying there's plenty of time yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did see Starmer running across the divide in the House of Commons, didn't we, to go and shake his hand?
We did indeed.
Just before the close of play.
And that's the point. You can disagree on most things, on many things, but where you find areas of agreement, then actually you should grab that and go for it if it's in the national interest. And you touched on health earlier. Back at the beginning of the election campaign, Wes Streeting and I agreed on the need to use much more of the independent healthcare sector. And I said so at the time, I actually think he was copying our policy. And so there are small areas where you say, this is the right way to do it. It's cross-party or no party. Get on with it.
And what about the situation with the money? Because in the morning yesterday, certainly before Musk's tweet that he thought that Nigel wasn't up to it, Nigel said he probably will give us some money. He probably will give you some money. It might not be. And I was reading, I think, over the weekend that there's been a new company formed over the course of the last week or two.
The honest answer is
in the headquarters of X in London, some kind of new AI company has been set up, which could be a vehicle for donating.
Well, the great thing is we've got tens of thousands of members joining every month, so very generously money comes in through memberships. I've still got 20 quid or so in the back pocket, so we'll be all right. Don't worry about that.
Good to know that you're not scrimping and saving in the early days of the new year.
Look, if people want to donate and are legally able to donate, and they've got business interests here, then that's great. But fundamentally, we want people to help us and support us who agree with our values, agree with our principles. But we're not selling out to anybody. We stick with it. We go for it. We know what needs to be done to save this country and to make it grow again.
So if Musk does have some money for you, you're not going to turn it down?
I think obviously that would be for discussion in the future. But at the end of the day, there's no strings attached to anything. We know what needs to be done, and we're saying to the British people, give us the opportunity to do it. The first opportunity will be council elections this May, although many fewer than was previously anticipated, because it looks like many councils are going to be essentially postponing their elections.
Right. Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it?
Funny that. Maybe they're worried about our growth and success, do you think?
It seems rather anti-democratic, doesn't it, to suddenly say we've decided to reorganise all of these local boroughs and local councils and district councils.
Well, what's interesting, it seems that the decision to do that in most of these counties is actually a Conservative-led council decision. So you're thinking, what are they running scared of?
Right. Well, one can only imagine. Meanwhile, today there's a debate in Parliament, I think it's in Westminster Hall, about whether or not we should have another election. This is obviously triggered by the 3 million petition that went in towards the end of... are you going to be involved in that?
So certainly Reform members will. We're going to be trying to sort of split ourselves because we want some people there, but also there may well be things to discuss, urgent questions that we need to try and get involved with in the main chamber itself. I've got a topical question on defence. So, yes, we will be spreading ourselves across all of the debates to make sure we're represented.
Yeah, and also, of course, as I say, with the story this morning on the front page of the Telegraph couldn't be more timely as well, which is all about the numbers of people involved in sex offences in this country. Foreign nationals more than 3 times as likely to be arrested for sexual offences as British citizens. We've seen more, I think the first lot of illegal migrants arriving yesterday over the course of the first ones this year, 61 already. What's going on with that?
Well, I think it's really important, and we've been calling, Rupert Lowe's been leading the way, calling for more transparent data. You know, good government is about transparent government, and we need to know this stuff. And so I think the Centre for Migration Watch, I think it was, that dug out these figures through FOI requests, and they're truly shocking. And in a sense, people feel, well, why weren't we told this? Why have you been hiding it? Oh,
why
that's the reason, because it's embarrassing.
Yes.
And we need to know, I think, all of this information. Who's been, which nationalities have the greatest likelihood of being arrested relative to the numbers in the country? And then you can sort of make informed decisions on the back of it and say, well, actually, maybe you don't share our values and our sort of way of doing things. So we need this data, and we need it on a regular, transparent basis, as other European nations, the likes of Denmark, I think, and I think Sweden may be going down this route, are providing. We absolutely need to know, because we're very concerned about the increasing crime levels. You're sort of daily hearing and seeing sort of machete attacks through high streets in various towns and cities. You think, this didn't happen 20 years ago.
No.
What's happened in between? Oh, I remember, mass uncontrolled immigration that no one asked for.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a link, maybe there's not. Let's have the data, and then we can draw our own conclusions.
Indeed. Very good to talk to you, Richard. Thank you very much indeed. Let's finish with a voice note from Paula, who wants to say something about grooming gangs.
Hi, Mike. Happy New Year. Missed you this last week. Quite often amazed at how often the stories that are running on your show and talk radio in general are just not featured on the main traditional news channels like BBC and ITV. But it was absolutely incensed this weekend to see that Channel 4 are about to rerun an old programme called The Fake Grooming Scandal. Now, what on earth is that all about? Given what's in the news at the moment, it's just an attempt to undermine the narrative, as usual, and to make people disbelieve things.
Well, Channel 4, of course, who also claimed over the weekend that Musk was losing following on Twitter because of his rather strange political views. Channel 4, that's got about 4 viewers. He's got about 650 million users per day on Twitter. It's just ridiculous.
I mean, I think generally what Channel 4 cover, and they are... they're so biased in their sort of left-wing approach. It is extraordinary, and we have to think very carefully about, is it a good use of one's time to go on their programmes? It is
probably not, and probably not a very good use of public money either. Might as well trash the whole thing and just redo reruns of Big Brother. I think that's what we'd be better at. 21 minutes past 8. Richard Tice, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We'll be talking more, of course, through the day about this debate in Parliament today in Westminster Hall about whether there should be another election. We know there won't be one, but it would be uncomfortable for Keir Starmer as ever. This is Talk.
since I first became aware of what we call grooming gangs, but I think rape gangs is a better description. In 2005, when I first learned about this horrific crime and how it has destroyed thousands and thousands of children's lives, I was horrified that nothing was being done. I worked on a case that was closed down by Greater Manchester Police, the official reason being because they would not put resources in. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:25. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until the 10 o'clock hour when we hear from Julia Hartley-Brewer, who's going to come in and tell us what she makes of all the shenanigans of things that have been going on over the course of the last few days and weeks, indeed. Morning, Mike, says Steve. Kudos to Nigel for standing up to Musk and not capitulating to him. Billionaire or not, he should keep his snout out of our politics, says Steve in Ipswich. Mike, am I the only one who is sick and tired of hearing about Musk every day, says Neil. Whilst this guy's extremely smart, no one has actually voted for him. We talk about this guy like he's God. We'll be talking to his dad coming up a little bit later on in the show this morning, and we'll find out from him whether or not Elon Musk is still likely to actually give some money to reform, whether he is in the process of falling out with them, or what exactly his thinking is about all of this. Let's get a voice note from Jay.
Morning, guys. Fantastic show as always. Just regarding the whole Elon Musk and Farage thing being replaced, I think Nigel's done a great thing here. Though, in my opinion, some of the stuff Tommy Robinson says is spot on. Yes, there does need to be inquiries. Yes, there does need to be investigations. But at the same time, Nigel's done fantastic for reform. Look at the surge it's had since he's been at the helm. The team there are doing brilliant. I mean, it is a shame that, you know, Ben Habib's not as part of the team no more. I personally think that Ben should be brought back into reform.
I think there's a lot of people that would say the same, Jay, and a lot of people, I think, unfortunately, when you see a party like Reform, will see flaws in it. They'll see things in it that they don't think they agree with. They'll see parts of it that they don't like. I mean, if you look at the Labour Party, if you look at the Conservative Party, you have many, many people within those two organisations who don't agree with an awful lot of what they do, and they want to change it. The same will be the case for Reform. You know, but Richard Tice has just been here, he's just been sat in front of me, and he's just said, look, we are very clear on what we want to do, and this is the message the party wants to put out. It's not at the moment, perhaps as broad a church as some people would like it to be, but there's a reason for that, because they're starting off. They're not at the end of their political lives like the Tory party are, they're at the beginning. And so, therefore, you know, they have to have disagreements with some people and they have to have agreements with other people, and that will always be the way. And I think an awful lot of people listening to this show, watching this show, will have great things to say about all of the players, whether it's Elon Musk, whether it is Tommy Robinson, whether it is Ben Habib, whether it's Richard Tice or Nigel Farage or Tim Montgomery. There's lots of characters, there's lots of individuals. The question will be, can they forge themselves into a proper political force? In order to do that, they need to do it under the auspices of a proper leader. And that proper leader, as far as I'm concerned, is Nigel Farage. And until that changes, for a good reason, not because Elon Musk says so, then I think that's the way it will be. Let's talk to Ken Scott, though, who's Managing Director of Scott Asia Communications. A couple of stories to talk about regarding net zero. We were speaking last week to Dan Hodges, who picked up on something I said about Ed Miliband, who's kind of careering around as if he's a one-man, you know, net zero specialist, trying to change the way that we all live, trying to make sure that everybody gets a heat pump instead of a gas boiler. One of the stories on the front pages this morning is that Labour's going to ditch that 2035 ban on new gas boilers, despite their drive to make everybody buy a heat pump. Let's find out from Ken what he makes of it. Ken, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thank you very much for joining us. The other story we wanted to talk to you about as well, of course, is the new net zero flight tax, which is coming in. I think it comes in this week because it starts at the beginning of January. These are all kind of little, what you might call incremental increases on people's ability to pay for things. We're hearing that this could put £300 or so onto a family holiday.
That's correct, Mike. It's another example of the British taxpayer and British traveller being effectively pecked to death by ducks. And this new sustainable aviation fuel mandate that came into effect on January 1 is another example. The goal is laudable. They want to perhaps reduce the emissions of the British aviation sector. However, it does mean that there's going to be extra costs that's going to hit the wallets of the already hard-hit British traveller.
Yeah, because we already pay, it seems to me, I seem to remember Gordon Brown putting it on, a sort of a higher flight tax than almost every other country in the world anyway, don't we? I mean, most of, when you buy your airline ticket, if you're actually able to see it broken down, there's an awful lot more tax being paid than in any other country in the world.
It's very high, and Rachel Reeves increased it even further back in October. She added another whopping 15% onto the air passenger duty tax. So that affects everyone. And this new sustainable fuel tax will put, the estimates vary, but anything up to like 40 quid, between 5 quid and 40 quid, depending on duration of flight, for the average flight out of UK. Of course, if you're going long haul, it will cost even more. And if you're a family of four, again, that could add easily 300 or 400 quid onto your flight costs.
And what they seem to be trying to do is to make airlines carry more what they call green fuel, right? So supposedly they have to fill their planes using at least 2% green fuel, which will rise to 10% and then eventually rise to 22%. But I mean, a lot of this green fuel isn't even particularly green, is it?
Well, it comes from recycled cooking oils and animal waste and even biomass from forests. So it's pretty nasty stuff. But the technology makes it more sustainable. However, it costs up to 7 times more, according to Matthew Johnson, the UK chemicals firm, up to 7 times more to create a sustainable aviation fuel. And, that extra cost, the government itself suggests that 80% or more of that will be passed on to the UK flyer.
Right. And I've always said this, that, to anyone who wants to have a conversation with me about making things greener, if you make it cheaper, people will be quite happy to do it. If you want to give somebody a heat pump instead of a gas boiler, if it costs less money to run, if it's more efficient, if it's cheaper to buy, then great, no problem. But it isn't. That's the problem, isn't it? And all of this biomass fuel, all of this so-called green fuel is more expensive, and there's no reason why it should be.
Well, that's correct. It's another example, due to the net zero fanaticism, of we're putting the cart in front of the horse. The technology is just not ready yet and scalable to be put into place. Whether you're talking electric vehicles and recharging stations, you're talking about heat pumps, or you're talking about aviation fuel, sustainable aviation fuel, they have the technology, but it's not affordable and it's not scalable. I mean, remember back in the old days, we moved from horsepower to steam engines, and then from steam engines to the internal combustion engine. At each of those wonderful steps of progress, they weren't created by governments interfering and putting in taxes and incentives. These happened naturally because the technology was ready and scalable. But we're just not ready yet with affordable and scalable technology to realise the net zero revolution.
Well, this is it. And I mean, it's called civilization, isn't it? I mean, that move that you've just described from walking to getting on a horse and cart to finally driving around in a Ferrari, that's called progress as far as I'm concerned. It's not something that we should be running away from and trying to go backwards with.
Indeed. We live in normally a democratic society, and it should be about increasing the quality of life for the average British person. And these incremental hits against the traveller and home dweller are, we're really hitting the pocket. And meanwhile, over in China and India, they're building coal-fired power stations rate of knots. And if we could magically become net zero tomorrow in UK, that gain would be outdone in a matter of weeks by all of the emissions coming out of the coal plant in China.
Of course. I mean, also, every time I ever ask a politician what happens if we do ever reach net zero, they never really know the answer to that. They don't really understand it. They don't really know whether it improves our lives or doesn't. They don't really know what it means for the environment. They don't really believe in what they're actually selling us. And that's why I think Ed Miliband is going to have his wings clipped over the course of this parliamentary year.
I think you're right. I think Ed Miliband is on very thin ice, and if Keir Starmer is got some nous about him, he will perhaps move Ed Miliband on to a new assignment. There have to be a face-saving operation and some backpedaling, but give him another nice job. But they will probably put back the net zero targets because it's completely unviable on current technology basis.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Ken, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Ken Scott, Managing Director of Scott Asia Communications, a specialist working within the travel industry worldwide. He says that net zero is a bad idea. Well, we know that, and more people are saying it as well. I think maybe they should give Ed Miliband the job of running London Zoo. Perhaps that would suit him better. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Phil.
Good morning, Mike. Phil from Hertfordshire. Mike, regarding Nigel Farage and Elon Musk, I think the opposite. I think Nigel has shown how strong and powerful he is by not buckling to the likes of Elon Musk, because there will be many politicians that will cozy up to him, especially when he's made the promises that he has made. I think that is the stuff of a very strong, focused leader.
I couldn't agree more, Phil. I think you're absolutely right. Tony says this: Nigel Farage should not accept any money from Elon Musk. He thinks he can buy Reform UK. No chance. We'll talk some more about that coming up. Next, though, Simon Danchuk joins us. He's got a lot to say about grooming gangs, about the cover-ups that happen in Rochdale that he knows about, also about what it is that Keir Starmer is frightened of and why he won't order a proper public inquiry. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:37. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Stephen from Wiltshire says the Home Office have refused to publish groomer deportation status. I bet none has been deported. Great show as always. Well, Stephen, I know certainly for a fact that there are several people who have been found guilty, have served time in prison and should have been deported, who have not been deported for one reason or another. The usual rules apply, of course, when the old lefty lawyers get involved and they start saying, oh, well, he's entitled to a family life. People who've got dual citizenship with Pakistan and the UK should be deported if they've been convicted of any of these crimes. It seems to be pretty bleeding obvious. Let's talk to Simon Danczuk, though, former Labour MP, because, of course, he's been very much at the centre of this story since it broke, once again, because of Elon Musk and some of the tweets that he's been putting out. Simon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, mate.
Thanks very much for joining us. You've had some very important things to say about this story. Can you just sort of remind us all of what you were told by an ex-Labour chairman when you were raising issues about these grooming gang scandals in Rochdale?
Yeah, absolutely. So to provide a little bit of context, I was the MP for Rochdale from 2010 to 2017, a Labour MP. The Rochdale rape gang scandal occurred and came to trial in May 2012. It was completely new to me. I wasn't from Rochdale, but I quickly got my head around it and realised that ethnicity, culture, religion was a key part of why these people, these perpetrators, were abusing these girls. And I said that. It wasn't long after that the local MP from next door, Jim Dobbin, came up to me and said, listen, you know, perhaps you don't want to mention ethnicity. It won't do us any favours politically. More concerning was that Tony Lloyd, just outside the chamber in Parliament, came up to me before Prime Minister's questions, and he said, listen, I don't think ethnicity is an issue in this. I don't think we should be mentioning it because it'll cost us votes. Now, that's significant because he was the chair of the Parliamentary Labour Party, an exceptionally powerful position within the Labour Party, and he was also on the verge of running for Police Commissioner for Labour in Greater Manchester. And I'm in no doubt that he was concerned that me mentioning ethnicity would cost him votes in that election. That really surprised me, disappointed me. I was disappointed that these politicians would, you know, consider that an issue when we were trying to solve what is a heinous crime. But that's the situation we found ourselves in.
And I mean, would you say, knowing what you know about those times, that Labour as a party was in some way nervous overall, not just at national level, but at local level? Labour councillors, many of whom were later implicated in various stories. Some of them knew some of the perpetrators, some of them were related to some of the perpetrators. I mean, it seems to me that the entire Labour sort of political movement, if you like, is tainted by this.
There is no doubt about that in my mind, Mike. I've been around Labour Party politics for, you know, decades, and this is an issue that they chose to sweep under the carpet for various reasons. I was just looking back at the speech that I made in Parliament soon after the Rochdale rape gang scandal broke, and I named the leader of Rochdale Council, a Labour leader, and said he was culpable. I said that at the time. Didn't do me any favours, you can imagine. But if you look at Rotherham and the reports into what went on in the Rotherham scandal, Labour councillors were implicated. Sean Wright, the Labour Police Commissioner, had to resign over it. Labour have got their fingerprints all over the cover-up in relation to these rape gang scandals. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
And so when Elon Musk starts to say that Keir Starmer is responsible for an awful lot of what happened there, whether it was as his role as the Director of Public Prosecutions or whether it's now later in his role as leader of the Labour Party, he's got a point, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has got a point. There's a reason why Labour are trying to close down this idea of a national inquiry, why Jess Phillips, the Home Office Minister, doesn't want this to happen. And it's related to votes, there's no doubt about that. Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions from 2008 to 2013. He came very late to this. He always plays on his record as Director of Public Prosecutions, but the truth is he doesn't have a great record. He ignored Jimmy Savile, he ignored Al Fayed. He came very late to this issue just at the end of his tenure. They are concerned about this being investigated. I'm sure about that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And also, one of the things that we know, for example, is that he's now decided that his response to all of this sound and fury that's going on is that he's going to go back to the J report from 2 years ago, published in 2022, and he's going to say that he's going to sort of make sure that he actions some of the recommendations in that report. But in that report, which has been heavily criticised, there's no mention of Telford. It mentions Rotherham only once in 400 pages. He uses the term Pakistani just once in the entire report, and the report relies on officials giving their statements rather than the testimony of survivors. And we know an awful lot more now than we knew when that report was put together, not least the information that you've provided, but also the information that so many victims have provided as well.
That's a really important point, actually. Labour are using the previous inquiry by Professor Jay as a smokescreen. I pressed the government at the time. I met with Theresa May, the Home Secretary. She phoned me up at home to talk about it on a number of occasions, which is in contrast to Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary at the time, who never spoke to me once about it. But on this issue, that was an investigation into historical child abuse, not least because I named Cyril Smith as a child abuser, a politician who was a child abuser, and that inquiry was looking at historical cases around Westminster. Very little to do with the rape gang grooming that we saw in the northern cities and around England. And so it's a smokescreen for Labour to say, oh, well, an inquiry's been done. These are completely different things completely.
Absolutely right. And in addition to all of that, we've still got this sort of ridiculousness of Islamophobia and the definition of Islamophobia hanging around in the parliamentary kind of space, if you like. And only this weekend, critics have said to Keir Starmer, you now have to drop this plan to have an official government definition of Islamophobia, because all that will do is protect even more of these people.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, this is evidence and proof that Labour are running scared about losing votes in the Muslim community. They lost seats in Blackburn, in Leicester and elsewhere during the last general election to Islamist candidates, Gaza candidates. And they're concerned about losing more votes. We've seen it in relation to an embargo on Israel. We've seen it in relation to their approach to first cousin marriages and Islamophobia and so on. It can't carry on like this. The British people expect the government to stand by the victims of these rape gangs.
And do you think this could be a watershed moment, not just for Britain, but for Keir Starmer and for Labour as well?
Yeah, I really do. The pressure is piling on. This is a big issue for the public. They won't let it go away. There's no doubt about it, Starmer wants it to go away, but I don't believe the public will let this go away. They tried to get rid of it some years ago. It's going to stay there. Labour is culpable and the public want answers.
Yeah. And what about your conversation with that former ex-Labour chairman of the party? I mean, where is he now?
Well, he passed away, but it's interesting that once I'd been sidelined by the party because I was a critic of Corbyn and because I've been raising these issues, who did they put in place in my seat in Rochdale? Tony Lloyd, and I'm not surprised by that. They were finding something for him to do, and they were recognising that he'd helped deal with these types of issues. It's an interesting aside. Whilst he went on to become police commissioner, he actually defended Sir Peter Fay, the chief constable, who I'd called to be sacked because of his role in all of this issue, but he defended him. And I think there are certainly questions to be asked around that as well.
Yeah, and Jess Phillips too, who spent most of her career supposedly protecting the rights of women and girls and makes big hay of doing that, suddenly gets an opportunity to do something about this particular problem and doesn't want to do it.
No, she doesn't. Jess Phillips doesn't come out of this very well at all. She had an opportunity. She's an Home Office minister. It's all good and well when she was in opposition criticising the previous government. When she has the power to do something in relation to these victims, she chooses not to. And many people will conclude that that's because she's being challenged very heavily in her community, in her constituency, by Muslim voters to do differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Simon Danchuk there, former Labour MP for Rochdale, giving us the lowdown on what he knows and what he knew at the time, and why Labour is right in the middle of a scandal here, because they have been covering this up for decades. And we know that. And now Keir Starmer doesn't want to open up that particular box of worms again. He doesn't want to see it. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. He wants it all to go away. He's going to try and enact the recommendations of a 2-year-old report, which wasn't even considered to be a proper report into what happened. And that is an absolute crime, as far as I'm concerned. Let's get a voice note from Tony.
Morning, Mike. Great show as usual. I think Farage is right to politely tell Elon no to Tommy Robinson. It's taken time for Reform to establish itself as not a far-right party, but the People's Party. Robinson would damage the momentum, and changing leaders would start the familiar pattern of chaos that we already see in other parties. Being the richest man does not qualify you to be the wisest.
Very well said, Tony. Being the richest man does not qualify you to be the wisest. Very wise words indeed. How about this from Ant, who says, morning, Mike. I think Reform should at least consider accepting money from Elon. The far left can't seriously call it anything along the lines of corruption, when as it is Labour accept money from the trade unions, the same unions which strangle the UK taxpayer and go on strike whenever there's a Conservative government. Plus, another way I look at it, Elon is the right's version of Bill Gates. Well, except as some people have pointed out, he hasn't always been on the right, has he? He gave money to Hillary Clinton. He's given money to Joe Biden. He's campaigned for the Democrats in various different times. You know, he's got some interesting views on net zero, which might not align particularly well with what Reform says. That doesn't really matter necessarily. But the fact is that, you know, as powerful as he is, as wealthy as he is, he may not always be the wisest man in the room in terms of politics in this country. Simple as that, really. This is Talk.
Out of hospital and treat them in the community where that's appropriate, getting rid of some of the pointless outpatient appointments that people don't need. So there are a wide range of reforms we're putting in place, as well as the investment to deliver the shorter waiting times and higher patient satisfaction that we had under the last Labour government that's been squandered in the last 14 years.
Now, you mentioned about the offering patients more choice. I believe that they could be offered anything up to 5 hospitals to choose from. How feasible is that?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:52. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. We're almost in the final hour of the show already. I don't know how we got here. This is the home of common sense. This is the year of common sense, of course, as well. Let's get a voice note from Dave on the Grooming Gang.
Morning, Mike. Dave at Manchester. Happy New Year. Just to underline the comments of that lady that's just been on, I was only sat watching the TV last night and watching the promotion of that fake Grooming Gangs documentary, what's coming on, and I thought, look at the timing on this. Starting to understand these the politics of broadcasting a little bit more. Keep it up, Mike. The good fight. Happy New Year.
Dave, thank you very much indeed. We're going to talk to Vanessa Frake, former prison governor, in a moment about some latest news from the headquarters of what can only be described as the antithesis to common sense, which is, of course, the Labour Party. They've decided they want to have a new rule on some prisoners. They want to have more prisons, open prisons, for more offenders to go into. It's a bit like making more appointments on the NHS by cancelling a load of other appointments. But before we talk to Vanessa, what about this, right? The front page of The Sun this morning, a great exclusive, outrage at balmy advice. The headline says, long Brahms of the law. Basically, there's some people that live near Abbey Road Studios in North London, a place called St John's Wood, which is a rather nice area. They live just across the road from it, but the trouble is junkies appear to have sort of taken over the street in which they live. They've smashed car windows. They've even threatened to shoot and chop up one particular resident who complained that they were there making a nuisance of themselves, basically taking drugs, robbing people, doing all kinds of ghastly antisocial behaviour at all hours of the day and night. They went to the police, this family, and they said that they were being terrorised by drug-crazed gangs. And you know what they were told by the police? Not to take the law into your own hands, not to come down to the station to make a statement, not to point out exactly where these people are. No, 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 none of that. The best thing to do, they said, is to play classical music to them. I mean, for heaven's sake. I mean, there's a great headline inside, which is, get back, spelt B-A-C-H, as in bark. Get bark. What a ridiculous story. So the police actually giving advice to beleaguered residents of a very nice area in North London who are being terrorised by a drug gang, play them classical music. I mean, for heaven's sake. Let's talk to Vanessa Frake. Vanessa, very good morning to you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mike.
I mean, I'm not against classical music, but it's probably not the best way to get rid of a crack gang, is it?
I could probably think of a few different ways I'd rather do it.
Yeah, I bet you could, some of which might involve a baseball bat, I would imagine. How about this, though? The Prime Minister's now considering open prisons for more offenders. I mean, so far we've heard the Justice Minister, Shabana Mahmood, say that she wants to create prison environments outside of prisons. Is this one of them?
Well, look, open prisons are themselves a vital stage of resettlement, usually for long-term offenders, spending the last 3 years of their sentence getting acclimatised, going out into the community, finding jobs, education, etc., building up support work for when they are finally released. What open prisons aren't are a holding pen for short-term offenders, because the government want to release the Cat B and Cat C estate up. That's what they're not. They're not equipped for that. They're not equipped to hold prisoners who don't necessarily, A, meet the criteria, or B, want to go to an open jail, or can't cope with an open jail.
Right. And an open jail basically isn't a jail at all, though, is it? I mean, you can go out and... I mean, a lot of people who attend these open jails go out and work during the day, come back at night, sometimes can go away for the weekend, come back on a Sunday, that kind of thing. And some of the people who are in these open prisons are quite dangerous criminals who have been convicted of quite dangerous offences, right?
Yes, that's absolutely true. But don't forget, they are all highly risk assessed before they even get to that stage. They've usually been, say, given, I don't know, say 10 years for armed robbery. They've worked their way down the categories from A down to D. So now they're coming out, they're looking at re-acclimatising, because 10 years is quite a sentence to be locked away from the general population of the world.
True.
And that's what open prisons are for. They're not for short-term prisoners who because they want to free up the estate.
No, exactly.
But, yeah, they can go out to work. I worked at Latchmere House, which sadly is now closed. we locked up just over 200 prisoners, but every day we sent 190 out into the community to jobs, to education,
Right.
to
And did you
meeting-
find that worked, i.e. they didn't come back into the system then?
Yeah, the majority do, yes. The majority do. You're always going to get, because of the numbers that you're dealing with, you are always going to get the ones that can't cope, the ones that reoffend. You know, you can't make it a fail-safe issue. It's just going to be impossible. But there are a lot of prisons that it really, really does help. My worry is that, you know, in downgrading Cat C prisoners to Cat D prisoners when they're actually not ready, you're going to get infiltration from gangs from outside. You're going to get drugs being brought in, alcohol being brought in, and open prisons are cheap to run because there's not the staff. You might only have 2 or 3 staff on nights at an open jail.
Right.
You know? And that's when you're going to get trouble, like they did it at Ford Prison in 2011,
Right.
when they tried to breathalyse some drunk inmates.
Well, that's one of the problems, isn't it, that we've seen with prison officers, apparently. Some criminals now wanting to apply to be prison officers because it's such a lucrative job bringing drugs into the building. Absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's bad eggs in every basket, unfortunately. And when you're dealing with a large service like the prison service, the police, whatever, you know, you're going to get bad apples in that basket. And the issue is to catch them out, to find them, dig them out. But I do think that, you know, we need to look at our vetting procedures. I don't think the vetting procedures currently are robust enough, and I think that's
right.
been shown and highlighted by the various incidents that have gone on.
I think that's right. Vanessa, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Vanessa Frake, former prison governor there, talking about open prisons and what they should be used for. Coming up in the next hour, Errol Musk is going to join us. That's Elon's dad. He's on the phone from South Africa. Isabel Oakeshott here as well. We'll keep taking your calls. Plus, former Health Secretary Stephen Dorrell.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 2 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. We are, of course, the world headquarters of Common Sense, and this is going to be the year of Common Sense. We've got Nigel Farage talking today about all manner of things. Of course, there's a debate in Parliament this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, about whether Keir Starmer should hold an election. He's under an awful lot of pressure, not least from Elon Musk over on the other side of the Atlantic, who's calling for him to be put in jail as a result of what he didn't do about the grooming gang scandal. Elon Musk, of course, has been having his own little tete-a-tete with Nigel Farage over the international airwaves on X. And, of course, we'll be talking to Errol Musk, Elon's father, very shortly coming up in this hour to find out what exactly will be the end result of what appears to be a bit of a rift between Reform and Elon Musk. We shall see. Also, coming up today, we're going to be talking about the final day of the Archbishop of Canterbury's tenure. Justin Welby, or Justin Wokeby, as we like to say, is spending his final day as he steps down over failures in handling his own sex abuse scandal. My question is, why on earth should he be allowed to maintain a seat in the House of Lords if he's no longer the Archbishop of Canterbury? I would say kick him out and say, no thanks, good riddance, you're not welcome. You're no longer the Archbishop of Canterbury. You don't get to sit in the House of Lords and get paid £350 a day just for turning up. Thank you very much indeed. Meanwhile, we've got Sir Keir Starmer, as I say, already under pressure over grooming gangs from Elon Musk, launching his new plan for the NHS, which is basically no plan at all. He's going to be revamping something that's already there. He's going to be promising to reduce waiting times in 5 years. He's also saying that basically they're going to create more appointments by cancelling appointments. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Chris.
Good morning, Mike. Chris in Northampton. Good to see you back and good show. Although old tin ear Keir's probably crying into his granola this morning, knowing you're back.
He probably is. He won't be looking forward to hearing from me, I can tell you that. Keir Starmer, will he ever come on this show? I very much doubt it. Will he last a year? I very much doubt that as well. 0344 499 1000. Isabel Oakeshot's going to join us as well. We've got so much going on. And also, don't forget the weather. It is pretty nasty out there. This is going to be the biggest sickie collectively thrown by people who don't want to go back to work today because of the snow, because of the rain, because of the cold, because of the wind. But we're here, and we will be bringing you all of the news that you need all the way through the day. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Now, just before Donald Trump takes over in the United States of America, the inauguration, of course, coming up in a little under 2 weeks' time, basically, or just about 2 weeks' time, I should say. Let's remind ourselves of who the current leader of the free world is. Here he is, President Joe Biden.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right.
I'm sorry. Happy birthday, dear. I mean, we've all been it. We've all done it. We've forgotten the name of the person. But, you know, you are the president, mate. Come on. Do a little bit of research. I do ask one of your aides to just whisper it in your ear. For heaven's sake. Let's talk to Errol Musk, Elon Musk's father. Errol, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And have a very happy new year to you as well, if I may say. Your son is, as ever, dominating the headlines this morning. He's on the front pages of all the newspapers here again because of his rift or his row with Nigel Farage, basically saying he doesn't think Nigel Farage should be the leader of Reform. He's not up to it, he says. Why do you think he thinks that?
Well, you know, I also think that I said on one of your television stations last week that I don't think Farage is strong enough to be, you know, to lead the UK. I feel that he talks sense, but he does not project strength to me. And subsequently, I heard that my son has, you know, sort of agreed with me. And then at the same time, you know, Elon has pointed out that turning your back on the rape situation, turning your back on Tommy Robinson, and of course all the people who are in jail for reasons that are laughable, is not right. And so, yeah, you need somebody stronger there. You definitely need a strong man in England.
Yes, I think that's true. But he hasn't turned his back on the people who are in jail. He hasn't turned his back on the rape gangs. He's calling for actually a national inquiry into that, which at the moment the government is refusing to do. So it's not correct to say that he's not standing up for people, is it?
Well, yes. You know, I'm just quoting what I heard from my son. I do think that maybe my son means he should be doing more. I'm not 100% sure. In fact, you know, he should really be doing a lot more about this. So, you know, I stand by what I said last week. I don't believe that Farage is strong enough for this position. We need to find somebody else.
The difficulty, I suppose, Errol, for a lot of people who are members of Reform and who voted for Reform have been communicating with me this morning, and many of them are saying that Nigel Farage is actually showing strength by standing up to your son, Elon, because he's basically saying, look, you know, we are running the party the way we want to run it. We've got ourselves to the place where we have got to, which is to have 5 MPs, where before they had none. They're building a party up from the bottom, basically, and he is the leader, and he's the man who the people who vote for Reform want to lead the party. And so, at the moment, there isn't really an alternative.
Well, you know, yes, I agree with what you're saying, and I would be very happy to see Nigel, you know, sort of improve, you know, or show a bit of strength. I mean, you know, it's England after all. We give people second chances in England. So, you know, the honest truth is I'd like to see Nigel step forward. I mean, in many ways, when a person is criticised, it doesn't really mean that's the end of the show.
Right.
It means, you know, can you buck up a bit, you know?
Yes.
Can also mean that. So, you know, I think he's a very pleasant person. And as I sit here now, I would say he would make an incredible minister of any department or of any ministry. And he'd been an incredible wingman. I'm just feeling from my point of view, from my experience, that he doesn't project enough strength at the moment. And perhaps this call from Elon will change things.
Yes. Well,
So
I think as I say, no, as I say,
he's a very likable man.
Yeah, as I say, a lot of people now are saying that yes, he has shown strength now because he stood up to Elon, because Elon obviously might be in a position to pay a lot of money to Reform. He might donate, he may wish to donate a lot of money to Reform. Do you think he would still do that, despite what he said about Nigel?
Yes, absolutely. You know, no question about that. But, you know, if he's allowed to, Elon is still a private citizen as at this time. On the 20th, if he's brought into the cabinet, you know, of America, he will be obviously have to do what he's told by President Trump, or, you know, and so I can't see President Trump disagreeing with any help that Elon gave. And if it's wrong from England's point of view, then it could be a loan. It doesn't have to be a gift. Can loan him money, and just as I've done and perhaps you've done, we've often had to loan money to get things done. So yeah, I don't see any problem with that at all. No problem.
And also, we understand...
It's really a case of stepping up, because one of the things that's really important is that you've got a man who really did step up as ordinary bred or lowly bred or whatever it is, or born he is, whatever you may think in England of Tommy Robinson. He's a rather nice person, and he's sitting in jail for his beliefs and for his work for the British people, which is so important. And he's sitting there, and what's being done about it? Nothing. I mean,
well, that's not.
And the spurious reason that he was put in for.
Yeah, but the reason, Errol,
his reason that he was put in because he didn't attend a court appearance. I mean, that's laughable, you know. I mean, that's totally laughable.
Well, I mean, the fact is that he had an opportunity to not be in contempt of court. He chose to be in contempt of court, and that's why he's in prison. So he's in there really because of his own actions, Errol.
No.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not in prison. No.
He's in prison for contempt of court.
I've committed contempt of court. All you do is you get a warning. You get your...
No, but he does it. He's done it multiple times, though.
Well, let's not argue about it. But what I would say is that he's the one person who has stood up for you. He is the one person in England who has shown that he's a man. Let's see what Nigel can do to match him. That's what I would say.
Right. Well,
must
Nigel
match
has
Tommy
already
Robinson.
matched him, if you like, because Nigel has stood for election and won a seat, whereas Tommy Robinson stood for election and didn't win a seat. So, I mean, he has a lot more support.
Well, yes, I accept that. And as I say again, I have nothing. I like my Nigel. I think he's a terrific guy. It's just that, in the situation that you are in now, where your economy is contracting and things are not looking good, and the answer is not taxation and so forth. And we're out here in the old English provinces and so forth. We look at England as an example. We've always thought England knows about everything. England knows the answers to everything. So, yes, well, let's give Nigel a chance.
Yeah.
I would be very happy to hear Nigel come out stronger.
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll be speaking to him, I'm sure, in the coming days and weeks, and I'm sure we can pass that message on to him. But the main reason why things are going so badly wrong in Britain right now is Keir Starmer. It's not Nigel Farage, you know what I mean? I mean, it's Keir Starmer who's the problem, and he's the guy that is causing all of these problems for us.
Oh, yes. Oh, no doubt about that. No, I completely agree with that. No, what I'm saying is Nigel Farage is the one we've got, the only person we've got at the moment who's out there, still available to do something about this Starmer, character. And, I can't see Starmer going on. They say by the end of the year. No, I say end of next month. He's going to be gone.
Well, I think it's entirely
good.
I think it's entirely possible, actually, Errol, that he will be swamped by this grooming scandal, because the grooming scandal is a scandal which entirely comes down to the front door of the Labour Party, because they were complicit, they were involved in clamping down on people's information, they were involved in suppressing information, they were involved in not prosecuting people. It's a terrible litany of wrongness.
Hard to believe. It's hard to believe, Mike.
It really is.
It's very hard to believe.
And there's been several offers, shall we say, to Elon Musk to come to Britain. He was offered, I think, by the Duke of Marlborough, a chance to come and have dinner at Blenheim Palace, which is, of course, the birthplace of Winston Churchill. Do you happen to know if he's planning on a trip over to the UK anytime soon?
He's in the air all the time, so it's very difficult to say. He travels very freely, so at the moment he could be anywhere. I mean, speaking to him, he told me, he's one night a month at home and the rest of the time he's in the air. So it's highly possible. I mean, these people in his position are, sort of moving around the world. It's strange for ordinary people to understand, but they can just about be anywhere in the next 24 hours,
Right.
Yeah, no, I would say that given the right conditions and the right circumstances, he would turn up. But at the moment, I think we are not so much looking for him to say anything. We're looking at Nigel to say some more and do more. We need to have Tommy out of prison. We need to have these people who've been put in prison for ridiculous reasons by the Starmer character taken out of prison. It's nonsense. And they have to be taken out of prison. It's nonsense. And we all know it.
Errol, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Errol Musk there, Elon Musk's father, talking about what Elon wants to see done and what Elon thinks should happen. Now, the question is, as we've heard from Richard Tice, whether there's any rift at all, and whether this is just really Elon Musk's version of asking for Nigel Farage to step up to the plate. Who can say? Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, who I think is right here with us. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Morning. That was a fascinating interview, Mike. So much to kind of pick out of it, wasn't it?
Yes.
I mean, I would say in terms of a top line, very interesting that Elon Musk's father is still pretty clear that his son will be prepared to donate a significant sum to the Reform Party, notwithstanding who is or isn't leader. And to be clear, there's no question of Nigel going anywhere.
No.
So, and I think anyone who understands UK politics would know that Nigel isn't going to be going anywhere.
Right.
So I thought that was very significant. I think that, and I say this with every respect for Musk Senior and Musk Junior, I don't think they quite understand how problematic Tommy Robinson is as a character in terms of his, very lengthy rap sheet. Yeah. This is not someone who's just a nice lad called Tommy. I know the name Tommy makes him sound like he's a sort of sympathetic, nice character. But that isn't the case. We know this, and I heard you pushing Mr. Musk quite hard on that. So it seems that all of this so-called rift is born out of the Musk thinking that reform needs to be, a little bit more sympathetic towards Tommy Robinson, more supportive. And that just can't happen because he's not the character that they think he is.
No, quite. And also, I think Reform are doing rather well, thank you very much, on their own. And I said to Richard Tice when he was here, and also to other guests this morning, Elon Musk is, of course, a very wealthy man. He's a very influential figure, but he's not the only wealthy man in Reform's kind of eyesights, if you like. I mean, they've got Nick Candy on board now. He's a very wealthy guy. He knows a lot of other wealthy people. If Elon Musk didn't give them any money, and it sounds like you say that he probably will anyway, there's plenty of other people that can give them money, and Nigel Farage and Richard Tice have stewarded the Reform Party pretty well, I would say, over the last 2 years.
Well, Reform is absolutely brilliant at gathering support and doing well in elections despite having basically very little money at all. The party is expert at making a huge amount out of a very, very modest budget. It's never had millions of pounds to spend except during the Brexit campaign, when, of course, there were huge donations from Brexit supporters. But in recent years, and including in the run-up to the last election, everything's been done on a shoestring. So that holds no real fear for the party leadership. And in any case, as you say, that wouldn't happen because the money is really coming in quite a significant way. I mean, virtually not a week goes past that I don't get some message from somebody saying, oh, well, I know someone who wants to give money, and often these are, Tory donors or people connected to former Tory donors who want to find a way in to be part of the action. So I don't think Reform in any way which party would ever say we don't want a multi-million pound or dollar donation? I'm sure Reform will be delighted with that. But it's not as if that's mission critical.
No, exactly right. And the slow and steady growth of the party is also important. And I've certainly said this throughout the course of the show this morning. The reaction from our audience and from most of the people that I would know here who vote Reform, who listen to this show and to watch talk, are all very much in support of what Nigel's done. And they've actually said it makes him look like a stronger leader, actually, to not kowtow to what Elon Musk is saying and to say, look, thanks very much indeed. We're still friends, but, I don't agree with you.
Yes, I thought it was, I was sort of quite amused by Musk Senior's suggestion that Nigel Farage isn't strong enough. I mean, good luck finding another stronger politician in the UK. You can level many a criticism at Nigel Farage, but not being strong is not a criticism I think holds any water whatsoever. To get where he is with all the brickbats, almost literally, that have been hurled at him, takes tremendous strength. And I think that you're right. I was very curious to see what would the headlines look like in today's papers, across the board. Who's going to... Of course, the left are going to make absolute merry with this criticism from the world's richest man. But in fact, the coverage is quite positive in many outlets. In fact, this is Farage showing that he does have what it takes to lead a serious opposition party potentially into government. Because look, it's very easy to pander to a very niche vote on the far right, but that's not what Reform is about.
No, it's not. And also, it's a broader church than that. And similarly, some of the things that Elon Musk has been saying, whether we don't like what Keir Starmer's done, I don't particularly like Jess Phillips, some of the things that he said are difficult politically to defend. I'm not saying I don't agree with them. I'm not saying that Nigel Farage doesn't agree with them. But he said yesterday to Laura Kuenssberg, look, I don't have to agree with everything he says, but he's not going to be drawn on the language, but that would have been a problem going forward if this hadn't happened, because he would have kept getting asked that question, you know, do you disavow this statement by Elon Musk as he gets more and more kind of outrageous?
Yes, and this is the thing with the super rich, and even it doesn't even mean that you have to be the richest man in the world. You know, the super rich are basically able to say and do whatever they like with very little consequences. So I'm sure that Mr. Musk will continue saying lots of interesting and provocative things, some of which Reform's leadership will agree with, and quite possibly quite a lot of it they won't. And you know, in due course, perhaps that he'll have his tensions with Donald Trump, you know, because he just clearly has the luxury and the platforms to say whatever is in his head at any particular time. And this is, I suppose, a warning about how close you get to people who are, you know, I guess, on the other side of the world and looking at politics from a very different vantage point to where we are looking at them here in the UK. And there is no doubt that this grooming scandal, which has been the backdrop to this controversy, is something that has united people across the political divide in absolute outrage. And the idea that Reform isn't being strong enough in condemning what happened and demanding in the loudest way possible that there is a full public inquiry is quite unreasonable, I think, and Reform will go on pushing very hard for that, because this was a truly breathtaking scandal, which I understand to some extent is still going on all these years on.
And I think it's big enough that it could actually bring down the government, because they're so closely aligned to what happened all those years ago in many, many Labour constituencies and many, many Labour councils. And so I think there's a massive problem here for Keir Starmer. And let's just finish with him. He returns from his tobogganing holiday in Madeira, where the public were booing at him, where he couldn't get anything right, even with a few days off. He's come back to find that the Labour government now has its worst ever popularity rating ever, minus 45%. Good start to the year.
I mean, parties like Reform want, you know, for their own self-interest, want Keir Starmer to be where he is for as long as possible. But for the sake of the country, this man is a total disaster. I have never observed in 20 years plus of political reporting a more catastrophic Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. I really laughed when Elon Musk's father called him this Starmer character. That's what he is. Look at him. He just looks like a complete muppet. He's doing terrible things to our country, and I don't think he's going to last much more than a year. Frankly, it may be less than that. The Labour Party are many things, but they're not politically that stupid as to not realise this guy is heading them over the cliff edge.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. Isabel, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Isabel Oakeshott Talks international editor there on what her thoughts were on Errol Musk, Elon's dad, who just spoke to us there about his view that possibly his son just wants Nigel Farage to buck up his ideas a bit. He doesn't necessarily want him to not be the leader. It may just be a South African thing. Maybe you say somebody's not up to the job. By that you mean, I want you to do the job better. That could be what he's up to. That could be what he's after. Coming up, we're going to talk some more about the NHS, because believe it or not, Keir Starmer has actually returned from holiday to make a massive statement about what he wants to do to change the NHS. But guess what? We've already debunked it in 3 minutes with a proper doctor. This is Talk.
with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is Talk. I think he was shocked. You can see the genuine shock.
I was like that.
Sees the boats coming in. Right, let's have the women and children first. He went, oh, just you lads, is it?
Yeah. He's been allowed to develop into this huge sort of problem for the BBC.
Yeah.
He'd love it, wouldn't he?
He would love it. That's why we're not doing it.
That's why we're not doing it. So it's Saturday night and you lucky people have got 4 of Talk's mightiest personalities in one room. I mean, what could go right? Me, Jeremy Kyle, Michael Graham, Julia, I'm Not Grumpy Tonight, Hartley Brewer and Kev O'Sullivan. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? Jules is smiling.
I think they've made us all look a lot better than we actually look.
There is
I know what to ask for next time I go to the hairdresser.
I'd like to talk about Jez's nipples on his...
You got nipples? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got nipples.
I don't know what to
I didn't think you had nipples.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 9:29. Julie Hartley Brewer's back from holiday. She's here from 10, as she'll be in just before that to tell us what's going on. Stephen Dorrell's here as well, former Health Secretary. We'll get his view on what Keir Starmer's latest news is on the NHS. But let's get this from Matthew first in Cheltenham. The situation with Elon Musk is very interesting. It is déjà vu. For anybody who follows US politics, he did exactly the same thing with Donald Trump. He was critical of him, but signalled his involvement in US politics more than a year ago, only to lend his support to the Trump campaign in the end. He's doing the same here. He's signalling his interest in UK politics and will most likely heavily donate to reform ahead of any general election. He says, great to have you back. Yeah, and Jeff says, hey, I love that you've got a hotline to Elon's dad. Vote Errol. Yeah, well, we talk to him from time to time here at Talk. We also talk to Stephen Dorrell from time to time, former Health Secretary. Stephen, very good morning to you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, and same to you, Mike.
Nice to see you. We've got a big announcement coming today from Sir Keir Starmer. He's come back from his holiday. I spoke to a GP slightly earlier in the show, though, having run past all of these various things. 500,000 more appointments being made available, community diagnostic centres, expanded surgical hubs. He basically said to me, well, most of this stuff's already in place. Some of it is up and running, some of it isn't. But he was of the opinion, and he's not sort of what I would regard as somebody politically on the right, this guy. He just said, I don't see where you're going to create any extra capacity here. It all sounds a bit like, you know, something that might happen in about 3 or 4 years' time.
Well, I agree with you, the guy you had on earlier. I would add to it, Mike, I think that what we're suffering from Wes Streeting, who I broadly like, is there's barely a day goes by at the moment that he isn't on our screens, apparently making an announcement, but not actually changing anything. And
that's the problem, isn't it?
Over the weekend, he was on the screen saying that we were going to have yet another inquiry into social care that isn't going to report until 2028. Now, you can't deal with the health and social care system on the basis that you deal with social care on Saturday and delay it, and then say we've got a plan on Monday to deal with waiting lists. And incidentally, to the announced figures published this morning showing that ambulance waits in the part of the country that I'm speaking to you from, in the West Midlands, ambulance waits, 1/3 of all ambulances appearing at a West Midlands hospital in the month of December had to wait for more than an hour to discharge their patients. Now, this is a system that isn't working, and you can't address it piecemeal. You have to think about it in a joined-up way.
Of course. And, I mean, one story this morning that I read says that more than 1,000 patients a day in England are suffering potential harm because of these handover delays. 414,000 patients estimated to have experienced some level of harm in the past year. You're right. And the problem is that all of these things that I've been reading about, and I read through them in some detail last night, these reforms that Keir Starmer's going to announce today, I mean, they're all very much a delay factor. You know, they're talking about getting us down to an 18-week but no longer wait for an operation in 2029. Well, if you're sitting here right now waiting for an operation that's already taken over 18 months, that's not really much help, is it?
No, I agree. The critique is not that what they're trying to do is wrong. I agree with the diagnostic centres. I agree with simplifying the care pathways. All of these things are important, but relatively detailed changes that do need to be made. Yeah. And incidentally, as your doctor said earlier, this programme was initiated by the last government and maybe even by the one before. What we haven't had from this government, we're now more than 6 months in, is a joined-up plan that sets out a set of objectives, not just for waiting lists on one day and social care on another, but for the health and social care system as a whole, and tells us how they're going to address the difficult problems that reveals.
Yes, and that is the problem. I mean, talk of, as well, doing away with unnecessary appointments. Well, if they're unnecessary, why are they in the system in the first place?
Well, in fairness, that is one of the things that they are addressing, at least an element of it today, because currently, if the GPs are not allowed to refer people to diagnostic centres, they have to first see a hospital consultant. Well, sometimes that's necessary, but not always. Yeah. They're taking out the unnecessary appointments. I think that's a step in the right direction. Right. But let's face it, it's a relatively modest one.
Well, it is, because, I mean, I don't wish to compare and contrast two things that aren't connected, but I know people that have been seen in private healthcare over the, say, course of the last 2 years, because a lot of people I know, even if they can't afford it, have now taken to private healthcare simply because they can't wait any longer to get something done. And the speed with which it gets done, and the speed with which a referral is made, the speed with which diagnostic testing is done, is out of all proportion to the NHS. Why is it that private healthcare can be so much more efficient than the NHS?
Well, in some aspects it is, and in some aspects it isn't. But taking the specifics of attending for a diagnostic test, it's undoubtedly true that modern diagnostics allows you to complete the diagnostic process much more quickly than traditional systems did. And the health service too often still relies on the old-fashioned timings, which were necessary with the old technology, but are not necessary with the new technology. Right. And that is one of the issues that I think is now being addressed. But as so often happens, too slowly and in a piecemeal way.
But this is my thing, you know, it's somebody that I was speaking to the other day had to have some tests done, some cardiovascular tests or something like that. They went to a private clinic, the reference was made, the booking was made. I think within 2 weeks they had the tests, and another day later they had the results. Similarly, if you try and do that with the NHS, they'll be booking you in for some time in October.
Well, probably not October, to be fair, but not in an acceptably timely way. And
I guess what I'm saying to you, Stephen, is that surely that's a matter of efficiency. It's not just a matter of scale; it's a matter of efficiency.
Well, it's a matter, and it's something. The health secretary, I've been there. I've sat behind the desk. I've got the T-shirt. You can't plan hospital appointment system from the Secretary of State's office. Right. What you have to have is systems in place in hospitals that deliver the detailed changes that are necessary to patient pathways, is the jargon. So the plan, the way in which a patient with a particular condition is dealt with by the system. That's something that where NHS pathways have not kept up to date with the opportunities that exist because of modern technology to make them simpler and most importantly, from the patient's point of view, quicker and cleaner.
Yes, exactly right. I mean, we saw a story just last week from a study that was done of the amounts of money being spent in the NHS. £1.1 billion extra has gone in the last 10 years on NHS managers. You know, while at the same time, over 1,000 GPs have disappeared from the system and there's not enough money to hire any new ones. So there's clearly an issue, isn't there, about the way the money is spent and the way the management is arranged.
Well, in any large organisation, we're talking here about 10%. I call it a large organisation, I'm wrong. It's a set of organisations. It's 10% of everything that happens in the UK economy. So unsurprisingly, there are bits of it that work better than other bits. Yeah. What we're not good at is taking the bits that work well and insisting that the rest of the system matches those breakthroughs.
Yes, I think that's right. Stephen, good to talk to you, as ever. Thank you very much indeed. We await, the amazing announcements that are going to come from Keir Starmer's mouth later on today. But I'm afraid, if you're looking forward to the NHS being improved anytime soon, I think you'll be waiting quite a long time. Let's get a voice note from Joanne.
Morning, Mike. Joan from Norfolk. So Nigel has been around for, as we all know, decades and has been vilified, cancelled, tried to be undermined by the mainstream media, by politics, by politicians, etc., and yet he's still here. Whilst I think he could have dealt with a Tommy Robinson situation in a different way, I think ultimately when you live in a country where the vile crimes that have taken place over the last 10, 15, 20 years of the systematic and rape and torture, arguably, of these young girls has been swept under the carpet for fear of being cancelled if people speak up, then you really understand the sort of fight we're in at the moment. Keep up the good work, Mike.
Joanne, thank you very much indeed. Quite right too. Nigel Farage is a fighter, he is a leader, he is a man that knows what strength is all about, and he knows what adversity is all about as well. And I think he's the right man to lead reform right now. I don't see any other possible plan that could change that. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Let's not get bogged down in Musk, says Bruce. Should they fall out now, it saves it further down the line when he's donated a gazillion pounds and thinks he's got a say in the party's direction. Interesting point. We'll have more of that for you throughout the course of the day here at Talk. Julie Hartley-Brewer's here coming up just before 10 o'clock. Coming next, we're going to talk to Susan Hall from the London Assembly, because guess what? London is the slowest city in Europe for traffic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:42. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be taking over. Lisa in Brum says, Elon knows Nigel can take the criticism on the chin. Nigel isn't a snowflake, and Elon knows this. And Matt in Swindon says, morning, Mike, do a great job as usual. Elon Musk, top bloke in my opinion, but does reform need his money to succeed? I think not. And I think a lot of people are taking that view now. But let's talk to Susan Hall, good friend of the show, London Assembly member, former Conservative London mayoral candidate, of course. Susan, very good morning to you. Happy New Year.
Hello, Mike. Same to you too.
Long time no see. Listen, I'm pleased to say that we can award yet another gong to Sir Sadiq Khan. I promised I wouldn't call him that, because he's now reached yet another milestone of making London's roads more congested than any other city in Europe. Well done, Sadiq, I say.
Well, you and I both drive in London, and it's a disaster. You've only got to talk to our wonderful black cabbies, and they're diminishing in numbers daily. I'm afraid I think we're down to something like 15,000 from 20-odd thousand. Yeah. Because it's so difficult to make a living driving around London.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I talk to London cabbies, I mean, they do less and less work, and they say that many of them are just kind of semi-retired because it's just not worth their while to come in every single day and sit in traffic making hardly any money.
Yeah, and that's what they do. I mean, it's bad for businesses. It's also very bad for blue light services.
Yes.
Because they just can't get through. And it's all these wretched cycle lanes everywhere, the LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods. I mean, during the mayoralty, I always mentioned Park Lane, to put those cycle lanes in Park Lane when there's a perfectly good cycle lane in the park. It was just virtue signalling from our wretched, awful mayor. He just wants to bring everything to a gridlock, so we're all forced not to use cars. Right. But not everybody can use public transport, and some of us don't want to. No.
And also, an awful lot of the public transport now isn't really fit for purpose. A lot of it is a lot older than it used to be, you know. Some of the tube lines now are sort of not fit for purpose anymore. They're crowded, they're overcrowded. You know, they've got technological problems because, you know, they haven't worked as well as they could work for probably a good 5 or 10 years.
Well, there's that. There's also the safety aspect. If you're going out at night, you don't want to be walking around London's roads because so many of us do not feel safe.
Well, that's another thing that he's created, hasn't he? He's created London as a much more dangerous city. I mean, the Labour Party talk all the time about safeguarding women and girls. Well, try telling that to women and girls that live in London.
Well, exactly so. He's not putting any particular effort into that. I mean, obviously, you know, crime is my big thing, and I'm absolutely appalled by some of the measures and the lack of attention to crime from Sadiq Khan. He should put his hands in his pockets and put more money into the Metropolitan Police. Yeah,
totally. And there's 1,000 mobile phone thefts every single week now. I was a victim of it back in, I think it was October of last year. And we've got, let me show you this that we picked up from the weekend. This is a raid on an Apple store in Brent Cross Shopping Centre, where basically a bunch of young kids, 14 to 18-year-olds, I mean, young men, I suppose, basically terrorise one security guard. They run in, all the people in the shop run out because they're so frightened. There's no police in sight, there's nobody. Then they run out with a load of equipment, a load of phones that they've just literally stolen, and they run off into the rest of the shopping centre. Luckily, I think some of them have been arrested, but not all of them. But, you know, people are being terrorised when they're going shopping, for heaven's sake.
Well, yes. Can you imagine if you were... I mean, I know it well because I don't live that far from Brent Cross. Can you imagine if you were in there with a couple of young children? Yeah. You're just browsing around. You'd be terrified. And you could see at the end of the clip that the security guard is coming out. But, I mean, in fairness, what can one security guard do against a whole mob that run in like this?
Well, that's it. I mean, you see him he stops one of them from going in, but the rest of them just pile in behind him. You know, there's nothing you can do.
That's right. And the poor staff in there, who are very, very helpful and very good. And they're so vigilant, the staff. Yeah. They're watching those tables the whole time. But of course, it's lawless London, thanks to Sadiq Khan.
Yeah, it really does feel like that. And I mean, you and I have been talking about this for a long time, many years. But it does feel to me, and I don't like to say this because I love London, it's our capital city, it's a great place for so many reasons, but it feels like it's much more lawless now than it's ever been.
Yes, it does. Because people seem to be emboldened by the fact that they shoplift, or thieve, I'd rather call it. Yeah. They can do things like we're watching on screen now and get away with it. Yeah. And really, they need to be taught a lesson. Yeah. They really do.
They really do. And I guess that a lot of that will sit not just with Sadiq Khan, but also with the Home Office, the Justice Ministers as well. Let me ask you this question, though, because obviously last few days we've been talking an awful lot about grooming gangs and some of the terrible things that happen in places like Telford and Rochdale and Oldham and Rotherham. You know, people have said to me quite frequently over the last few days, how is it that there's none of this kind of activity going on in London? because, you know, we've got plenty of, you know, ethnic areas of this of this city which might, you know, potentially have those kinds of problems, but we don't hear about them.
Yes, I remember it was during COVID. David Curtin, an Assembly member, actually asked Sadiq Khan whether we had any.
Yeah.
And his response was something along the line is, "Are you asking me because of the colour of my skin?" I mean, the trouble is, and this has gone on for years, politicians are scared in a way of being called racist. Now, the Labour lot for years have thought, right, we'll get rid of that person, we'll call them racist.
Yeah.
They did it to me during the mayoral campaign. Hope Not Hate put out hundreds of thousands of leaflets with racist written across my face. And because that is so damaging to politicians, and I suspect that's played a part here, along with police. They don't want to be called racist. And I'm afraid this is a situation that has now come to a head, and I hope to God that we start dealing with this.
Yeah.
These gangs, which are mainly Pakistani men, prying on these poor white, very young people, it's got to be looked into. And quite frankly, don't tell me, Mike, that it's not happening in London, because I'm afraid, I fear that it is.
Well, if it is and it's covered up, then that's even more disgraceful. And let's hope that whatever Elon Musk does, by sort of rattling the wasp's nest and shaking the hornet's nest to do whatever he's doing, that some more of this stuff will come out, and the people who will be held responsible are not just the perpetrators, but the people who covered it up, because those are the people that we need to go after.
Yes, they are, and
Absolutely.
I hope we do.
Yeah, absolutely right. Susan, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Susan Hall, London Assembly member, former Conservative London mayoral candidate, and as she said, somebody who was very much a victim of left-wing propaganda. They call you a racist, they hope you go away. They call you a racist, they hope you get cancelled. They call you a rapist, they hope they hope that the rape accusations disappear because you can't make those because you're a racist. Well, not anymore. This is the year of common sense, as I've said, and we continue to support that, and we continue to be the headquarters of common sense right here at Talk. Let's get a voice note from Neil.
Hi, Mike. It's Neil from Dundee. Loving the show, as always. Just got a thought on the Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage story. I am a Reform member, and I have to say that I don't think that Tommy Robinson is someone that Reform wants to be associated with. While he might have some good points, he isn't a mainstream figure, and his brand is quite toxic to a lot of people, and I think that just turns people off the actual message and the good work that Reform and Nigel Farage are doing. So I think that we're really better without him, and we can continue to push on and make a difference in politics in this country.
Neil, thank you very much indeed. I think you speak for an awful lot of people this morning. Certainly that is the overwhelming view of people who voted Reform and people who voted for Nigel Farage. One here from Margaret. It says, "Morning, Mike. What a great measured response from Nigel Farage. We need him in number 10 ASAP. And Dan from Kent says, "I'm glad Elon has fallen out with Farage. Elon wants to promote far-right politics in this country, and Reform UK are simply right-wing and should stay that way." Interesting times. We'll have much, much more to talk about over the course of the day here. Julie Hartley-Brewer coming in shortly to tell us what's coming up on her show after 10. Coming up, we'll take more of your calls, we'll take more of your views, we'll hear more of your voice notes, of course, as well. This is Morning Glory.
It's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is Talk. I think he was shocked. You could see the genuine shock.
I was like that.
Sees the boats coming in. Right, let's have the women and children first. He went, oh, just you lads, is it?
Yeah. He's been allowed to develop into this huge sort of problem for the BBC.
Yeah.
He'd love it, wouldn't he?
He would love it. That's why we're not doing it.
That's why we're not doing it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 5 minutes to 10. We've been here nearly 4 hours, believe it or not. Ladies and gentlemen, 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory. Every single weekday morning we'll be here from 6 a.m. And if you can do that too, that would be marvellous. Some pretty bad weather coming our way over the course of the next week or so. So if you haven't got your winter fuel allowance as a pensioner because it's been taken off you by Rachel Thieves and Sir Keir Starlin, then have my permission, and with my permission, please do put the heating on and don't let yourselves get cold. And if somebody comes for you and you say you can't afford to pay the bill, just don't pay it. Simple as that. This is what Richard Tice told me a little bit earlier on today about Elon Musk's tweet calling for a new leader of reform.
One should expect that from Mr. Musk because he's surprised throughout his whole career, from his very first most successful investment to what he's achieved with Tesla. Everyone said it couldn't be done. He did it. Everybody said it couldn't be done to make Twitter and then call it X to make that work. He did it. Everyone said he couldn't make it work with SpaceX. He did it. So he always surprises, and so you shouldn't be surprised when he surprises you.
Right.
That's the reality.
Will Nigel be worried about what he might be saying to Donald Trump, though, perhaps?
Look, I think at the end of the day, the President-elect is a man of his own mind. And again, he surprises people, but he and Nigel have got a very strong relationship. Nigel's been incredibly loyal and worked very closely with the President-elect. And the most important thing, actually, is that hopefully that will bear fruit in terms of, with the discussions over trade deals, over tariffs. Looking forward this year, that's going to be very significant. The fact that, thankfully, we're outside the EU.
And what about the situation with the money? Because in the morning yesterday, certainly before Musk's tweet that he thought that Nigel wasn't up to it, Nigel said he probably will give us some money. He probably will give you some money. It might not be. And I was reading, I think, over the weekend that there's been a new company formed over the course of the last week or two.
The honest answer is
in the headquarters of X in London, some kind of new AI company has been set up, which could be a vehicle for donating.
Well, the great thing is we've got tens of thousands of members joining every month, so very generously money comes in through memberships. I've still got 20 quid or so in the back pocket, so we'll be all right. Don't worry about that.
Good to know that you're not scrimping and saving in the early days of the new year.
Look, if people want to donate and are legally able to donate, and they've got business interests here, then that's great. But fundamentally, we want people to help us and support us who agree with our values, agree with our principles. But we're not selling out to anybody. We stick with it. We go for it. We know what needs to be done to save this country and to make it grow again.
So if Musk does have some money for you, you're not going to turn it down?
I think obviously that would be for discussion in the future. But at the end of the day, there's no strings attached to anything. We know what needs to be done, and we're saying to the British people, give us the opportunity to do it.
Well, so Richard Tice there, taking the view, as I think most people who have been watching and listening this morning have taken, which is that, Elon Musk is Elon Musk, If he wants to give them some money, they'll take it, but, He's not in the business of appointing leaders of political parties in Britain. Julia Hartley-Brewer's here. Welcome back.
Very good morning.
Very good morning.
Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Great to see you. Happy New Year.
It feels a bit weird saying that after the state. Healthy. No, I've got exactly the same cough and lurgy I had before I went away.
Everybody's had it.
The whole of Britain.
I know. The whole of Britain's had it for about 3 or 4 weeks, I think, one way or another.
It's a bit boring, isn't it?
I know. And I came back and did a show last week. I couldn't speak. But, you know,
bonus, did the figures go up?
Bonus, they did, funnily enough, yeah. Just took a load of calls. You come back to another sort of firestorm. Keir Starmer, even more unpopular than he was before you went away.
I didn't realise that was possible, but yeah, it really is. I have to say, all those pieces, end-of-year pieces, New Year pieces,